Good afternoon, everybody, morning, evening, wherever you are in the world right now. Don't panic yet. It's here, Marnik, but we're not starting. We're starting at 3, so we have 2 to 3 more minutes. So if you're now and you're like, Marnik, I still have to finish my Netflix show. I still have to do some coding, go to the toilet or get a quick coffee or tea or whatever you're drinking right now. It's okay. 2 to 3 more minutes at 3 sharp. We're going to kick off this OpenSlava 2021. And if you're already watching, because people are currently pouring in, going to the platform, also people watching on YouTube and Facebook, but I'm going to dive in that later when we officially started. Let me know that you're there. So I can also check, of course, we did some testing, we're professionals, but I can also check if the chat is working. So let me know real quick if you hear me and if you're pumped, if you're excited to be here. So leave it in the chat if you're in the platform. If you're on YouTube, on Facebook, I probably won't see it. But for all the people in the VSF, the virtual show floor, the beautiful surrounding, if you're there, you can use the chat for stage 1. And if you put it there, you can let me know, Marnik, I'm here. I'm super excited. And to make it easy, you can just put a number. Just put a number 1 to 10, how pumped up you are to be in this new OpenSlava. And like I said, in the meantime, I know that the chat is working. Let's see. If I look on the right, it's not that I'm not interested in what you're doing, but it's just I have this big monitor right here with all the chat coming in. Sometimes I might wait during the conference because there's a slight delay, 23 to 30 seconds. So I might stare a bit awkwardly at the chat, waiting for the answers coming in. But that you know up front that everything normally goes smooth. So if you're doing that, let me know. We'll probably come in and we're going to start, if I'm looking at the timing, in 1 more minute. If you have no clue, who is this man on my screen? Why is he coming all the way from Belgium? I will introduce myself in a second, but I'm still Marnik for the loyal OpenSlava people. They're like, hey, it's Marnik again, because it's the 5th year that I've been doing this, and I'm super excited to host it again. If I'm looking down, I'm looking at my backstage crew, so make sure that we can make this as smooth as possible. I also have a backstage screen that you can't see, but there I also see the first speakers coming in, prepping themselves. It's online, but you know how it was last year if you were there. People are excited, they're pumped, they give their best, they dressed up for the occasion. So I'm really happy to be able to introduce them. So like I said, if you're just joining, I'm just warming you up. We're going to start in a second. If you want to let me know how pumped you are, scale 1 to 10, and put it in the chat, and it will come into stage 1. If you're still figuring out how do I use all this stuff, I'll explain it in a second. But normally, if you registered, everything will be in your mail. Now, I think I'm looking at the timing. It's 3. Let's be sharp on this one. So the only thing I can say is, ladies and gentlemen, are you ready? So let's get the show on the road. Welcome back. So now it's official. I'm Marnik van den Broek. If you just joined, I did a quick warm-up right now. Welcome to OpenSlava 2021. This is the 9th edition. So next year, we still have to do this year. We just started, but next year it's a 10th-year anniversary. So we'll be big and fireworks and dancers and things all going all over the place. But I'm already having some sort of anniversary because this is already, and time flies when you're having fun, this is already my 5th time that I'm hosting it. So if you're known to this, I'm Marnik van den Broek. If you're new and this is your first OpenSlava, super welcome. I will be your host. I will guide you through these 3 amazing afternoons. And if you look at your program, the 3 afternoons, they're going to be a bit different. They're all going to be around digital technology, making business work, innovation. Of course, that's OpenSlava. But you will see this first day will be around business, combining it with technology. Now, you might be into coding and like, oh, this first day is not for me. It is, because it's not just about coding, it's not just about technology at OpenSlava, but you also have to get the projects, you also have to get people on board, employees, board members, because if you want to make great things and innovate, you got to get people along and see the bigger scope. And that's what this day is about, combining that mindset together with the tech. So we got beautiful speakers coming in. We have a panel discussion, which was really popular last year. So you will see today business tech, Tomorrow, it will be 2 streams, will be different, 2 streams. We're going to dive right into the tech. We're going to do coding. You will see people from Amazon, from Google. We're going to do everything live, all the things you love. And then the third day, we will have everything digital. And you will also see that tomorrow there will be a second host for the second stream. I'm also looking forward to that person. He's a local stand-up comedian, famous blogger, vlogger. His name is Jan Gordulik, and he will be joining us tomorrow. Today, you have to do it with Marnik. And a big topic you will see throughout the program is cloud. Now, there will be a lot of talk about cloud, and we're going to be with our heads in the cloud. I'm going to talk about rain. It's going to be an entire weather forecast. But the cool thing is we have so many known names in there giving their best. Like we have Koen Schelfaut, we have Mary Hamilton, Rick Clark. We have people that worked on Game of Thrones. Like I said, Google, Amazon, big names ready for you to rock, and all made possible, of course, by Accenture, loyal partners, Red Hat, Siemens, Google Cloud, Takeda, JetBrains, Robimi.it, and Google Development experts, all making these 3 afternoons possible. So I'm also looking forward. And like I said in the small intro, if you're now, you heard me talking about the chat, if you're now on YouTube, Facebook, also a big hello to you, more than welcome. But if you after a while see, how come these people are interacting with the speakers? How come they get to ask questions? How come they get to enter competitions, win Nintendo Switches, free licenses to certain programs? How is it all possible? Well, that's all possible in what I like to call the VSF, the virtual show floor. It's where it's all happening. So if you're like, I'm not there yet, go to openslava.sk. You can still register. There's like, I think, a 30-minute delay. For the people that registered on there, you have all the login credentials to get there. And it's a virtual floor where you can walk around with your avatar, interact with our partners, with people that have their booths there. You can ask questions. Tomorrow you can network. So if you want this OpenSlava experience to be so much more, you can go there, openslava.sk. And if you're already there, great. Then you see my head on a big screen in the room while you're holding your cocktail drink with your avatar, and I hope you're enjoying yourself. So I'll come back to that and repeat how you're going to get there. If you have questions, put them in the chat and there will be someone to help you. Or if you're in the program or in the virtual floor and you have no clue what to do, just ask the avatar and they will help you. But like I said, we will have chat, exhibition. You can gather badges, which you can claim after a while. Big thing with the badges, I'm gonna say this up front. If you collect in the virtual show floor, if you collect the badges and you click claim reward, there will be some sort of fireworks and you'll be very happy. And it will be like, yes, you got your award. But that doesn't mean that you won the Nintendo Switch. Just to be clear, that means you entered the lottery to be able to win possibly the Nintendo Switch. I just want to make that sure before I have a chat full of people saying like, hey, 700 people won the Nintendo. It's an important point to know. But if you want to join, go to the virtual show for openslava.sk and we'll tell you all about it. But looking at the timing, there's a lot of practicalities. And no worry if you miss some stuff and you're still getting settled in or you're still working, you have the stream open, just relax, sit back. This is for you to add value. And I'm looking backstage, and for the people that know OpenSlava, know that it wouldn't be an OpenSlava if we didn't have this man opening the conference. And you get to know him. And if you look him up on LinkedIn, I always say it's James Bond. You could easily mistake him for James Bond. But we know he's the country manager. I already see him smiling. We know he's the country manager for Accenture, Slovakia, and Hungary. He's an amazing, amazing guy. You're going to love it. And he's going to do the official welcome of this OpenSlava 2021. So, Tomáš Volek, are you ready? I see you nodding. So take it away. The stage is yours, ladies and gentlemen, for the official opening of OpenSlava 2021. Tomáš Volek.
Thank you, Marnik, and hello, everybody. My name is Tomáš Volek, Accenture Country Managing Director for Slovakia and Hungary. And I am pleased to welcome you to the virtual OpenSlava 2021, the Accenture annual conference on emerging technologies and open source. When we organized the first OpenSlava 9 years ago, we could only wish to build such a great community of extraordinary people from Slovakia and abroad. I mean, all of you, thanks for coming again. It will be almost 2 years since we witnessed how leveraging new technologies can help business to remain resilient during the uncertain times. it's become clear that there is no leadership without technology leadership. That makes our conference focusing on the latest technology trends even more relevant. Those who were able to quickly adapt to changes had something in common. They were digital, embraced cloud in more significant ways, and could count on their employees. And therefore, I would like to thank to our more than 2,000 talented people in Slovakia for their hard work and dedication. We would not be able to deliver on the promise of technology without their human ingenuity. And before we dive into the topics and exciting technologies which we have prepared for you this year, I'd like to highlight our Accenture truly extraordinary year again. Of course, it was reflected in our recently announced financial results. It was 11% growth of our revenues, reaching now 50 billion USD. Achieving profitable growth while investing for the future at a higher level than ever before, especially in acquisitions, research and development, and trainings of our people. And with 20% increase in sales, we are well positioned for the future, also for the new fiscal year 2022. But the past fiscal year was special not only because of our financial results. We also welcomed approximately 118,000 new colleagues in our Accenture family globally. While here, our Advanced Technology Center in Slovakia grew by more than 30%. And finally, I want to highlight cloud again, which is together with digital transformation, driving momentum in our business. After investing in cloud for a decade, we saw that the pandemic would dramatically accelerate our clients' move to the cloud. What was innovation yesterday is a business must today. It is therefore no surprise that this year OpenSlava will, among other technologies, focus on cloud. But more specifically, what is next? We are honored to have with us Koen Schelfaut, who is Accenture Europe Cloud First Lead with keynote presentation on the future of cloud. And as said, this year OpenSlava is hosting you on a new virtual show floor online platform developed by Accenture Liquid Studios, including my colleagues from Slovakia. Thanks to first-person navigation in a 3D environment, you can make connections with people almost like in a real world. Try it during the networking sessions. The platform is designed to work seamlessly in a web browser, and with no surprise, it runs on a cloud. So enjoy, make sure you get the maximum from our inspirational speaker. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tomáš. And now the crowd goes wild in the chat. Like, of course, like I said last year, we're in this virtual environment. That doesn't mean that you can go wild and use emojis in the chat in the virtual show floor. So if you like the introduction, you're like, Tomáš, I'm just as excited as you for talking about cloud and all the other stuff that we're going to do in the next 3 half days. Let you know in the chat. Now, people might be thinking, Marnik, you asked us some stuff in the chat. Why aren't you responding to us? What is this? You asked us a question and you ignore us. We're having a larger delay with the chat, but I now see it coming in. So I wasn't ignoring you. I was just waiting for it to pop up, but we'll sort this out. Tomáš, before we go, of course, to Koen, the keynote speaker, just a quick questions for you. We have a beautiful program, 3 full half days, evenings, if I can call it. There's a lot, like I said, beautiful names in the industry on there that are going to deep dive, talking business, digital, tech, coding, cloud, you name it. What is for you? Of course, you're going to like everything because you organize it together with the team. But what is the thing that you personally look forward to or would recommend to the audience watching right now?
There are at least 2 very interesting topics which I would like to see. There is one about the future of AI and how it is going to influence us, right? And also, there is one important one about the future of the IT, of what the leaders need to decide today. So, those will be my favorite. They are on the 3rd day. So, but again, as you said, the content is very interesting. And I really miss that we have the 2 sessions in parallel because I would need to switch or run on 2 screens.
Yeah, but maybe if there's a robot version of you, you can do both. So I remember AI on the last day, where that's going, and future leaders. And that brings me to my second question. Last year, I heard someone in the panel say the World Health Organization sped up the digitalization or the digital transformation in businesses worldwide. Now we're even a year further. You're talking about leaders working with people, making sure we can keep up with the innovation. How did, if I was informed correctly, how did Accenture tackle that? How did you change your way of working for the current environment?
Now in Accenture, we have really a hybrid model. No? So it's not anymore about the offices. For example, in Slovakia, we have in technology 1,500 people. And if you ask me how many is in Bratislava, it is less than 1,000. Yeah. We are now in every small village, where the talent is located. So now we can go really after the people and enable employment to anybody, because we are not anymore focused on a single place. So that's one of the major changes, which I really like.
Nice, good to hear. Cool. I would continue the discussion, but I'm looking at the time and we have to move forward, of course, with the program. I want to thank you again for opening and organizing together with the whole team and making this OpenSlava 2021 possible. Hope you can enjoy, of course, the last day that you're looking forward to, but the whole program, and hope to digitally bump into you in the chat and enjoy it yourself. Thank you so much, Tomáš Volek. Give a round of applause. Thank you, Tomáš, in the chat if you liked it. And now we officially kicked off this OpenSlava 2021. Let me take a quick look into the chat. Let's see what is coming. Yep, I see Fran Perez asking a while back, of course, is the chat Marnik was talking about, is this right? You are in the right chat, so that's good. It's the stage 1 chat. So like I said, if you're in the VSF, let's dive down to VSF, virtual show floor of Accenture, the beautiful 3D environment that Tomáš was talking about. There you can engage with me, the other speakers, and the panels. If you're looking on YouTube and Facebook, you can also chat, but that will not be monitored. You can sit there and have fun, of course, and enjoy the show. But if you want to join us and you haven't registered, go to openslava.sk, and you can still register. It takes half an hour to process. You get a tutorial video, and before you know it, you will be walking around with your own custom avatar and engaging with also the other people in there. So let me before we go to the keynote, do a quick check on what we got. We had some problems with the chat, but it's live, it's digital, but everything is going to be sorted out. There you go. It's hard to watch for me. So there you go. Some people having some issues, but normally that should be fixed by now. So again, let me know, how pumped are you for OpenSlava? Let me know 1 to 10. And maybe I also asked it last year, but I think it's a really interesting one, because you see the OpenSlava community expanding and expanding and expanding. Where are you watching from? Where we are so used to, like Tomáš said, in this remote environment. So where are you right now? Let me know the country, or are you at home, the office, in your man cave, or whatever you're watching from. Let me know in the chat, and I want to see if this whole thing is going. Now, it has been teased already a bit. We're going to start off with our keynote speaker, and I look at backstage, and he's getting ready. He's jumping in, and he's going to talk about the future of cloud, which we're going to elaborate throughout the 3 days. And he calls it the future of cloud, a continuum of opportunities. And the man I'm talking about, I'm really excited about this. You're thinking like, Marnik, you're excited about everything, but I'm really excited about this. Why? Because I'm probably one of the few people here, unless you are now letting me know in the chat that you're also from Belgium or maybe the Netherlands, that can pronounce his name correctly. I already hear him laughing. It's Koenraad, but he goes by Koen. So if you can pronounce that, you're already his big fan. And why can I pronounce it? Why can I pronounce it right? Because we're both from the same country. I'm from Belgium. I'm also live broadcasting this from Belgium. But he's the EU Cloud First lead, global tech lead and resources at Accenture. So he's the man to start this keynote. He is Belgium, unless he corrects me, but he has been working all over the world. And a good friend of mine always said, Marnik, you sleep in Belgium, but you live in the world. And Koen is one of those people that are really living by that quote. To a bit background information, because you can look up on openslava.sk what he's really all about, but he worked all over the world. He's in the lead for Cloud Accenture. He's going to share his key findings on Accenture research, the best practices is what he's going to show in his keynote. And he likes cycling. Now, for the people that are not familiar with Belgium, cycling is you're obliged to like cycling in Belgium. So you get born and then your parents have to sign a form that says that you're gonna like cycling, and that's the national sport in our country. So I'm super happy that he's also a cyclist. Koen, I'm going to check with you backstage. Are you ready to rock the stage? Because if you are, I'm going to announce you and I'm going to give you the floor. I don't see you out in the backstage, but you're going to pop up. There he is. All into Halloween. All into Halloween. So Koen, give me the single. Are you ready? I'm going to give the audience over to you. Ladies and gentlemen,
well,
talk about it. You ready?
Absolutely born ready.
He's born ready. So you might not be hearing this, but he's born ready. So without further ado, the future of cloud, a continuum of opportunities. Our keynote, our first speaker of OpenSlava 2021, Koen Schelfaut. Give him a digital applause. Koen, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I think I'll first start with my first task, which is trying to share my screen, right? So that's always going to be the interesting bit. Let me see if the technology kind of works. You guys should be able, if someone can give me a cue that you're seeing my screen.
We're seeing your screen. We're seeing your screen.
Super. Well, Marek, I was very impressed that you kind of said that you can pronounce my first name, right? The last name is typically the one that people struggle with as well.
Yeah.
Bit of background of little Jack here behind me. Number one, kind of, he's always keeping my tie in good shape. Second thing is my boss told me go and kill the competition in there. So that's the last one who entered my room. So joking aside and getting to more serious topics. Number one, delighted to be with you. I hope next year we can do that physically because, well, the world is kind of missing me a little bit. I like to kind of be with folks and not just sit and present and talk to you from behind a computer screen. So what I'll talk about today is really about the future of cloud. So what do we mean by this? It's actually about the vision on how do we kind of go from a vision to a reality and how do we translate it into value. So today, the keynote will not be about technical migrations, but it's really about what does it mean to live in the cloud? What does it mean for a client to be in the cloud? So let's kind of move on, right? Talking about Europe and the cloud. I think we've seen with kind of the pandemic that Europe kind of came to an inflection point. Working from home, getting kind of much pressure on like bandwidth, the latency kind of issues. So it really has driven a lot of our customers to move to the cloud. But what we've seen that the emphasis was mainly on the migration from, well, the on-prem to the cloud centers, but not much more than that. Right? And there are a couple of reasons for this. And we also kind of think that we need to change our narratives to our customers. And this is what I wanted to share you a little bit today on what is it exactly, right? How do you drive value out of the cloud and don't just see it as kind of a cost optimization means. So let's look at a little bit of like data which we got from a study that we did with more than 1,000 of our European clients. Let's start with the good news. Right? So within Accenture, we always kind of try to have a friendly competition with my colleagues from North America and from the other regions. So here's the good news. That is that like we're slightly ahead of the others. We're slightly ahead of kind of the US by about 5%. But what does that mean being slightly ahead? So if we look at like how much did we adopt cloud, right? But very generically. So software as a service, but also platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, right? So cloud in its generality, we're slightly ahead and kind of leading the pack, right? We also kind of hear that from 90% of our clients that moving to the cloud did realize cost savings to them, right? And for people that are working from you in the cloud space, you know that there's been a debate on, well, did cloud really kind of bring the cost savings anticipated? But on average, people say, well, we kind of got 10% savings out of it. But I said, this is the good news, right? Which probably also means there's a little bit kind of less good news. So look at the stack of like the technology stack and the maturity or the more kind of advanced technologies, what you see is that we're ahead of kind of the rest, but it is mainly on the technical side, right? About technical migrations and also about security. But look at all the rest, right? So if we look at Are we leading in big data? Are we leading in artificial intelligence and algorithms? Are we truly changing business processes on the back of like logic that the cloud kind of enables us, right? And where we sit on all that data. Are we leading the pack on connected vehicles, connected refrigerators, connected devices, right? Well, the answer is no. You can really kind of see here, like if you look at containerization, like on rewriting your apps and making it all kind of containerized, we're about 40–50% behind like North America and like China. Right? So the good news is we are adopting kind of cloud. The good news is also there's a lot of kind of opportunity for us. The bad news is that Europe is a bit lagging behind if we compare to the global world and to the global scale. Now, some more statistics here, right? What I find quite shocking that we ask our kind of customers about, how do you see cloud? What's important for you? We're the only region that's still answering to that question with a top one answer, lowering operating costs, right? Which I think is the obvious thing. The ones which of course are much more interesting are the answers from the US and from China, where the US is saying, well, it's about using cloud technologies to increase customer value, or China that says like, well, we'd like to use cloud to speed up the introduction of new products into the market, right? So you see with us that we're the only people looking at the cost equation side, which means there's a great opportunity, because you'll hear it more from me today. It's not about a cloud, but it's about the rain. It's the rain that creates the value. It's not the cloud per se. Right? You see the other ones here, right, that our customers are saying in Europe, well, it's all about increased customer value as well, a bit about financial growth, about agility, flexibility, elasticity, right, etc. But you don't really, for me, it's really striking that I don't see the cloud as a means to transform businesses. Now, next question would be, how long would it then take for us to kind of be at that same level? And here's a little bit of the strange thing. Our research is showing something else which we didn't kind of put in this deck, but the question to our customers was also like, how much are you going to be spending on cloud and cloud technologies? And what you see for Europe is that actually our customers are saying they're going to be reducing the spend on cloud. And it's quite logical, because they still kind of think, well, if I migrated all my stuff to kind of a hyperscaler data center, then I'm done with it. So I can slowly start reducing kind of my spend. Now, if you do this, it would take Europe up to 3 years to be at par with North America. Well, needless to say, right, number one, I would be losing my bet with my North America colleagues, saying that like Europe is kind of really, really superior to them. So that would not be nice. But more seriously, it would mean a competitive disadvantage for European companies to kind of, well, introduce products faster to the market, change entire industries, change the way how we do business, how we ensure ourselves. And I will be sharing some examples like of typical, well, actually not typical, but leading customers in this space that have taken kind of cloud to a new level. So up to 3 years, unless we kind of have the right narrative, we change the way on cloud, how cloud is being perceived, and also that our clients are willing to kind of reinvest the savings money into reshaping their industries and reshaping their businesses. Now, why are clients, so what are our clients basically saying? So why the hell am I not kind of doing it, right? Well, complexity of business and operational change. What do we mean by this? Well, number one, Europe is not a country. I went on vacation to Italy, and it was interesting. I saw some of our people or our colleagues from the other side of the sea saying, I visited Europe. Well, I always need to explain to them that the European community by itself is 24 countries, that we speak 20 languages. Right? And if you then add, I would say, like our friends from the UK, and we look at a broader Europe, like with Norway, etc. in it, we're roughly talking about 50 different kind of countries. So people are saying, well, we're more complex. So when we look at cloud, when we look at business, right, we need to, it's not just one shot. There are complexities in there. security and compliance risks. And I'll talk in a minute, right, about like data sovereignty and sovereign cloud, which is emerging, right? So people are saying, well, I'm not sure if I really, really want my data to sit with like North American companies, because my data could be accessed. I could be losing control over my data. And especially in our public space or the European community or in defense or police departments, right? People are really kind of worried and moving their stuff to the cloud. So the whole thing about security and compliance risks is quite prevailing. Well, you can definitely see that's the #1 reason, you know, for the US and for China, but it doesn't kind of seem to hold them back to kind of do more with cloud than just technical migrations. An interesting one for me is also misalignment between business and IT. Right? I call it the watermelon effect, where IT always says, I'm doing a great job because all the KPIs are green. And the business says, well, it's not about solving kind of issues, it's for preventing issues, so we're not happy with the service. So same thing, right? But it's like green on the outside, red on the inside. We see this also in cloud. I hear a lot of business people saying, well, why should I worry about cloud, right? So the best kind of cloud is the one where I don't even know I'm running on the cloud, because IT just needs to shift stuff, right? And this is, again, I think the education that we kind of need to bring in all of you, right? Be it even on the technical space, even if you're like a full stack engineer or if you're a business analyst, I think we have an obligation to think about use cases and look at how do we reinvent entire businesses on the back of the cloud. Now, I just said security, data sovereignty, sovereign cloud, major kind of topic for Europe. Like, what do we mean by sovereign cloud? We see through initiatives like Gaia X and like data hubs within countries that people are saying, well, you know what, we need to find a way that the data can only be kind of stored, manipulated, accessed, or that it's been upgraded with kind of new things from like Google or Microsoft Azure within a country with national people. And you've seen recent announcements, I think, on the news of like some of our, the MAGs, or I call them the Amigos. It's like the Amazons, the Microsofts, IBM, Red Hat, VMware, Google, Oracle Cloud, ServiceNow, MongoDB, and I may be missing on quite a few, but it's really about how do they team up with a national player to develop very specific cloud services which can control identity and access management, build new sovereign cloud solutions, use data which they would like to keep within the country to an advantage to create like weather forecasts for farmers by connecting all the thermometers in a country together and creating a data space and a data hub on a national basis. So for us, that cloud sovereignty, none of us has like, you know, a magic ball. So we don't know if this is going to be mandatory, if it's going to be regulatory, or if it's going to be advisory. But I can tell you, I'm having a lot of discussions with telco operators on saying, well, does that mean if I'm a national telco that I should be entering kind of data hosting in a way and work together with the system integrator or with technical providers to offer these type of services? So cloud sovereignty is a very important topic for us here in Europe, and probably also will scale beyond kind of Europe over time. Now, I mentioned it before, it's not about a cloud, but it's about the rain that comes out of the cloud, which is giving life. That's the value that we want to target about. And let's get into some examples on what it means to kind of create value from the cloud. Well, number one, I said about it's not just about migration. So we introduced kind of at Accenture the topic, we call it the cloud continuum and the cloud continuum players. What do we mean by that? So in the past we saw, well, we moved from distributed computing to public cloud, which was all about bringing resources together, centralizing resources, getting economy of scale. But it was all very much like single cloud, single kind of, well, data center, like latency, elasticity, all the good stuff, and then it kind of stops, right? What we see is that the world is going to be hybrid, and we have like great speakers in the next days, right? And people like from Red Hat, from VMware. Well, the world is going to be hybrid, right? We will move to multi-clouds, right? Where not everything is going to be sitting with Microsoft or with kind of Google. It will be integrated. It will be multi-cloud. We will have combinations of private clouds, sovereign clouds, public clouds, edge clouds, 5G as an enabler. It will be about technical work, but it will also be about artificial intelligence. It will be about business transformation. So what we mean by cloud continuum is companies that embrace a cloud first mentality, which is really saying this is not a one-shot exercise, but it is a fundamental change in the future that will change the way how we work, but also the products that companies will be offering and the talent transformation, like how to move from like a single stack engineer to a multi-stack engineer. So this is really what we mean by cloud continuum. It's companies who embrace the full flow. Where are we today? Well, very brief on this. Only 1 out of 10 European customers really thinks of themselves as being a player in a cloud continuum space. 9 out of 10, they say, well, we're somewhere in cloud, either through software as a service or by migrating stuff to the cloud, but they don't organize themselves around a cloud-powered business. Now, let's take an example of one that does work in this way, IKEA. IKEA is really kind of a great example. And I jotted down a number of things here on my pages on what IKEA has been doing. Well, everyone knows IKEA. I learned last week that like every baby that is conceived in Europe, well, there's a 20% chance it was in an IKEA bed, right? So just a little Wikipedia kind of fact. There may be regional differences, but I think 20% is already a big number. But what did IKEA do? Well, they were hit majorly by the pandemic, right? So everyone likes to go and eat the Swedish balls, which you use. Actually, you use buying furniture as the excuse to eat the Swedish balls. And then they closed the shops with a pandemic. So everything went through kind of online ordering and internet ordering. And these were unprecedented volumes. So IKEA's infrastructure could not handle this. So they had to move everything to the cloud. But it wasn't about moving it to the cloud so to handle volumes. At the same time, which they did is they doubled down on the click and collect option, making sure people still got their furniture or whatever they wanted to have. You could kind of order it. You could come and collect it, just minimizing people in the shops. What they also did is they closed down some shops and turned them into warehouses because we needed to kind of have stock which was close to the customers. So we need online stock. We need to have the flexibility to convert stores into warehouses. We need to introduce click and collect and ordering systems. What they also did is because they had really kind of all this online data of ordering, applying machine learning and artificial intelligence on it to spot patterns. So that people got recommendations about like furniture that matches other stuff. So I think IKEA like went from very fastly kind of making sure they could allow the big volumes by moving to the cloud, but by then applying data analytics and becoming really kind of a cloud-led, data-driven company. So they're a great example of a company that is embracing all the aspects kind of cloud, both from a technical and from a value side. Now, what does it mean, right? So how can we unlock kind of success and move towards this kind of value-based approach around kind of cloud? So let's just kind of give an example of each of the 4 pillars that we see kind of coming back. One of them is make sure that the money that you save through the technical migration is reinvested through kind of a value business case. Very important. So it's not just about a cost saving, but it's about freeing up money to reinvest it in building these new kind of business models that we kind of talked about. An example which I was very kind of closely involved in from that aspect, Gear. Gear is a company that makes the smart meters that are in your garage, which are transmitting your real-time electricity consumption to the provider. Right? So the first discussion we had was, well, we need to kind of cut down costs. So we need to kind of move the data center where all these kind of millions of readings continuously kind of are streaming into. We need to move it to the cloud and we need to save costs. Well, we changed the discussion together with Gear and we said, well, it's not about like shifting the data to the cloud and realize the savings, but you know now, for every household that has your smart meter, what is their consumption pattern? You will know if people are doing their laundry like at 12 o'clock or at 9 o'clock in the evening, right? So imagine that you use this data, you create apps for households that are saying, well, based on your electricity consumption, here are some recommendations for you. And by the way, it would save you 500 euros a year on your electricity bill if you do your laundry at night, right? So this is using the power of the cloud and the access of the data to really introduce new services to people and contribute to sustainability, because if we produce less energy, it will help through CO2 emissions, it will help companies and the planet to become more sustainable, right? So there's a higher purpose than just moving stuff and smart meter data to the cloud. So that's an example of a company who's using the savings and reinvesting them to kind of define new business models. Second pillar, right? Market for a unique preference with balance, trust, and control. What does that mean, right? I said before, like there is no such thing anymore as like a single cloud and a whole company runs on it. That the world is going to be hybrid, but that also means that we kind of need to make choices, right? And one of these choices is going to be around how do we create trust so that people trust the cloud, right? And we don't need to fear that it's like somewhere floating in kind of space and we don't have control and access over it anymore. And with balance, we kind of mean, well, this kind of multi-cloud scenario, private between kind of public, but also what do I do with Google? What do we do with Amazon? What do I do with the rest of clouds and create APIs and services? So an example I want to show here is Siemens. What does Siemens do? Siemens actually, well, they're a customer of ours, but they're also kind of, well, creating their own cloud services. So they created something called MindSphere. MindSphere is technology which they apply on all the PLCs and the circuits which they make, which allows customers to kind of get real-time information, predict downtime from machines, failures, overheating, whatever it is, right? So they first developed this based on AWS. They then created the version on Microsoft Azure. They now released one which is based on Google. Right? So this is an example on how like a company is not really locking in its customers with kind of one provider, but is creating the balance and the trust and the control so that customers have choices. There's no lock-in. And they can use the software which is integrated with their own strategy, not related to kind of Siemens, like about how to interact with like an SAP on Azure, for example. Right? So it's all about this balance and introducing new services which are not providing kind of lock-in for the future. So I think that's a great example what Siemens has been doing on creating balance. The third one is establishing cloud practices. What do we mean with a cloud practice? Like, it's really designing everything around the cloud. And I'll give you an example because it sounds a bit kind of theoretical. So take Roche. Right? Continuous goals. What does the CEO from Roche say? They say, well, people see IT as something technical, but it's all about analyzing how people behave and behavioral kind of change. It is by applying analyzing the data, big data, right? looking about it, see how it contributes to the top line of the company. Right? So they are continuously seeing on how can we improve and change Roche on the back of what technology is offering us. So don't do technology for technology, but do technology as an enabler for kind of bigger things. IT experimentation. Right? So their whole community is around labs. So how can we experiment? A great example here is that they're using kind of AI and MPL technology to really crawl data that goes through social media posts from people, etc., to analyze issues and symptoms related to Parkinson's disease. Typically, doing a market screening on what do people say, what symptoms, what treatments, how do they react, etc., takes about 6 months to get any meaningful insight, and is costing thousands of kind of dollars. What they're doing now is that with this technology, on the back of this kind of, well, crawling of big data lakes and applying intelligence on it, they can do this in 11 days. And it cost them about 10K to kind of launch such a study. So this is about really organizing your company on massively using all the benefits of cloud and taking it to the next level, which is benefiting people and curing diseases in a much kind of faster way. So that's what we mean by organizing yourselves kind of around the cloud and continuously kind of see the opportunities that you can derive from it. The fourth one is experience. I think it's moving away from a transaction and an experience. Shopping should not be about buying trousers or about kind of buying a new pair of shoes, which I both hate, by the way, but it is about entering a shop and providing you with an experience. Great example here is like Sephora. What Sephora is saying, well, you can buy everything kind of over the internet, so that's not how you differentiate. But what Sephora is doing, they offer you an experience in the shops. So you can scan your face, it will discover the tint or the color of your skin, it will come up with recommendations about makeup, like what looks good, what doesn't kind of go together. Based on your final choices, they will kind of also enrich the algorithms behind it. They come up with more accurate predictions and more accurate recommendations for the people in the shop. So it's all about not buying something, but providing you with an experience where you feel valued and where you like coming to the shop because it's something more than buying. So this is really about what we kind of see, a good example of how Sephora is creating experiences. So in summary, cloud continues here. Don't stop after operation. There's so much more in it. And it's not about a cloud, but remember, it's about the rain and the value that the rain brings to the planet. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Koen. And right on time. You're spot on. This is really cool. Perfect time. This is military timing. That's the Belgian way of working. Very nice. And the good news is you're gonna no, but they don't know. They don't know, Koen. Let's just I don't know. Belgians are really strict in their timing. Thank you so much. And of course, the good news is you're going to stick around with us because we have the panel discussion and we're going to continue on the future of cloud. And I see in our backstage that the other speakers, the panelists, are joining us. Now, for the people that are watching, which is really cool that the chat is working again. We had minor hiccups. I had to log back in. We had the IT solution. Someone said this IT solution, just shut everything down and put it back up and it will work. And yes, it did. So thank you so much for that suggestion. Looking now, I know we are on timer, but I still want to show you that I really appreciate that you're coming in with the chat, and I want to continue using this throughout the 3 days. So looking really, I know I have to go to the panel, but looking where people are from, we have people from Colorado, USA. We have someone saying I'm 100 out of 10 in energy, so they're gonna explode there. We have, of course, a lot of people from Slovakia. Welcome. Thank you again for hosting this virtual thing. We have France, we have Czechia, Bulgaria, Ukraine. I get the feeling that more and more countries every year are joining the OpenSlava community. And super thank you for everybody doing their digital claps. So Koen, if you're seeing this, I don't know if you see the chat, but I'll let you know that people are clapping for your presentation. So I just want to share that love with you. But without further ado, we're going to continue talking about cloud. And like I said, people joined. But before we do that, give us just 2.5 minutes. Technical, we don't have any problems, but just a technical fix to get the panel set up, get the chairs and the tables. But to keep you entertained, we will show you a very interesting video on cloud. And after the video, we will dive straight into the panel and get as much value out of these great speakers as we can. So see you in a bit.
We are engineers by nature. Since the beginning of time, we have tried to improve the human condition through innovation and technology. Our history is one of art and science. The natural elements have inspired us. We partner with them to make our dreams reality. Just as water is vital to life, so is human ingenuity essential to engineering value from the cloud. By combining our inventiveness with technology, we get the best out of every drop. The moment is now. We have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to lead a new revolution. It's not about the clouds. It's about the rain. It's the value the cloud delivers, how it moves the world forward and brings new life. Let's challenge our clients to look beyond the cloud, to grasp the value it creates for their business, using it to irrigate their sustainable and responsible future, empowering them to navigate the ebb and flow of change. As we do this, we want to transform and raise entire industries to the next level, because, like artists and scientists, we combine deep knowledge and skills with the ability to reimagine what those industries will look like in the future. A future where industries keep our data safe with sovereign cloud. By working with our ecosystem partners, our amigos, the hyperscalers, we combine our industry knowledge with their platforms to proactively drive transformation. And by building on our greatest strength, the ability to join forces and collaborate in multidisciplinary teams of highly skilled strategists, consultants, architects, and engineers, we can shape and lead our clients' future in the cloud. By uniting all our engineering talents, we can make every raindrop count. We can make an impact by turning vapor into value, enough to fill an ocean of opportunities. Together, we are the rainmakers. We are value creators, knowledge builders, multi-skilled collaborators, and engineers by nature. We are Cloud First Europe, inspired by art, driven by science, engineered by rainmakers.
Which is great. You can ask questions. So if you're like, Marnik, stop asking your questions. We want to know more about this or that. Link to the topics that we're talking about. Just put it in chat and I'll be your spokesperson. And if you just joined and you're like, what chat are you talking about? Because there were some people saying like, is this the chat Marnik is talking about? It's the stage 1 chat in the VSF, the virtual show floor. And if you're on YouTube, Facebook, you will not see that. But if you join on openslava.sk and register there or already registered, you can have a whole 3D experience where you can do a lot of cool stuff. And in the chat, people are also saying like, it's really, really cool. So definitely check that out. All right, let's get this panel on the road. Before we start, this panel discussion is like Koen said, it's not about the clouds, it's about the rain. And he already showed us that he meant with rain, the value that cloud can bring. So let's bring a lot of rain in this panel. Who we have, Koen needs no introduction. My Belgian friend is still here with his scary Halloween person in the background. Then we have lady Mary Hamilton, Managing Director of North America and Latin America lead for Accenture Tech. That's a whole mouthful. That must mean you're doing something important. So that's great. I'm looking forward to hearing your expertise. And we have Chris Morgan from Red Hat, leading customer and field engagement team for hybrid platforms at Red Hat, also a partner. And we have Rick Clark, I hope I pronounce it right, the Tanzu advisor at VMware.
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, for me it sounds Tanzu that you're some sort of ninja, but I have the suspicion it has to do something with tech. So the Tanzu advisor at VMware, he's a technologist, strategist, and a thought leader. So very different, all of course the tech cloud background, but very different angles from very different companies. So we have Koen, Mary, Chris, Rick. Welcome. I'm going to start this off, and like I said, I'm not going to appoint people. We're not in a classroom. I'm just going to throw it out there and see what we got. I'm going to start really simple. I know our audience is tech-minded. They're coding developers, people that are in business innovating. But has been so much talk about cloud, and also from my perspective, this is not about me, but I talk to clients, a lot of business owners that need to fund all this stuff. They talk about cloud, but I don't get the feeling that everybody knows what is meant with cloud. And also, I just saw the movie Creed with Sylvester Stallone, and they make jokes about the cloud because he has no clue what the cloud is about. So my first question is, can someone explain to me in very simple words, what do we mean exactly when we're talking about the cloud? Is there someone that has some sort of definition, like that's what it is?
I have one. I explained to my mother and my father that the cloud does not exist. I'm saying it's just someone else's computer, right?
There you go.
That's really what it is. I'm saying, guys, right? It's like buying your new MacBook with a 1 terabyte kind of hard disk and a 1 terabyte memory, and you're only using kind of 10% of it like every day. So why do we need to buy this, right? I can do it on iCloud and I can store my data there, buy a cheaper model, and I'm only paying for utilizing the data, utilizing the compute power when I need it, right? So I think that's how it started. It's about reducing the cost of saying, why would I buy something for the event that I would use it in 1% of the time? Mm-hmm. But I think it then moved on, I would say, to the more advanced things on saying, well, if I don't have this unlimited kind of compute power, etc., what can I do with it, right? But the cloud for me, just someone else's computer, which is managed more efficiently.
For me, it's even more than that, right? It is automated infrastructure, and it's programmatically accessible automated infrastructure. Even before there was the cloud, you had weeks lead time to get a server installed before you could do anything, and so it accelerated everything that we do. And actually, to me, now the cloud itself, the automation doesn't matter. What matters is the software we're doing around it, the native cloud native stuff we're doing around it matters a lot more than where it's running or how we spin it up.
Yeah, and I think when you think about it, I kind of break it down into it's the deployment model itself, right? Is it private? Is it public? Is it hybrid cloud? Right? Whose computers are you borrowing? Right? Whose machines? And then also, what are the set of services, right? Is it software as a service? Is it platform as a service? Is it infrastructure as a service? How are you using that compute?
Okay, so if I have to go ahead, Chris. Go ahead.
Well, no, I guess I was going to say for me, it's actually less about the technology. It's more about how people want to consume, as Conrad was alluding to, and that ease of acquisition. Because in some respects, like our parent company IBM, they would probably argue the mainframe was a cloud based on how timeshare works when you do time slice and those kinds of things. It's just kind of bringing some of those concepts back around and giving choice, right? Particularly at Red Hat, we're big on trying to remain neutral on a lot of stuff and enable that choice. And that's moved not only from a technology, but from a how people want to consume things. And I think that's what cloud brings. And so to Mary's point, where it is almost becoming irrelevant, hopefully, or ubiquitous rather, not irrelevant. And so it's about that, I would say.
Okay, so next time I go to a business leader or my grandma, like Koen said, it's like, what is the cloud? And we need to do the cloud. We need to invest in the cloud, and the cloud is really important. And someone asked the question, well, what is it? You can you summarize all these definitions into one and break it down to, well, we're going to use someone else's computer. They're not going to know about it, but it's going to give you endless possibilities. And in the end, it's not necessarily about the technology, it's about what you do with it. That's going to be a bit of the explanation. Of course, the audience is like, we know what the cloud is. If I look at the chat, everybody's using rain and rainbow emojis. So they're getting into this panel discussion. Thank you very much. But that also brings me, even though it was a really simple one, but that also brings me to what Koen also touched upon. And maybe this is also a good one for Mary, looking at your responsibilities, South America and North America, is it's no longer about the clouds, it's about the rain, it's about bringing value. But still, if you look at the research, we're still scratching the surface. We're still asking the questions, what it's about. Do you see, let's start with Mary, do you see big differences in how it's used in regions, in the phases they are? Are we still in the exploring, or are we really going for the rain?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've moved past, at least in North America, we've certainly moved past the early skepticism. I will say, so in my role leading tech innovation, I've been part of an R&D group for many years, and we signed one of the first cloud services contracts against all of Accenture's advice at the time. Liability, what are you doing on this cloud thing? And to kind of watch the evolution of business and the skepticism, the early skepticism. Say, we can't put our data out there. There's privacy issues. There are so many things now that we've overcome that between, the private hybrid cloud, some of the, the privacy protecting, data techniques, that I think it is table stakes today, very much in North America. It has to be, if you want business continuity, if you want scalability, if you want to de-risk what you're doing, if you want agility, resiliency, you've got to be on the cloud, right? And then it's about, okay, in what stage are you? Are you migrating to the cloud? Are you accelerating on the cloud? Are you doing innovation on the cloud, right? How are you advancing where you are and on that cloud journey? But if you're not on the cloud journey, you're definitely a laggard, right?
Okay, so like you said, it's no longer, it's your ticket to play. It's like you got to be there. It's not I see Rick wants to add on that.
Yeah. So one of the things, and before I was back in the US, I was the pivotal field CTO in Europe, based in Amsterdam. And one of the things that I see a huge difference now between the sort of Europe and North America. In North America, everyone jumped all in, and now they're trying to manage their cloud spend. And things aren't automatically going to the cloud, trying to deal with the $10 million bill they got from AWS. And they're not quite to that in some places. They're still throwing everything to the cloud. So I think there's sort of this linear progression to throw everything to the cloud, like, oh my God, it's now costing me too much because I just lifted and shifted all this stuff and didn't actually rewrite things. So now in the US, they're working towards that, rewriting things and being more cloud native.
Okay, interesting view there. I also saw the gentleman laughing. So you have to move fast and go to the cloud, but if you move too fast, you're going to spend too much. So you have to find the balance in between somewhere. Or am I saying something stupid?
No, I don't think it's wrong. Going back to what I said, sometimes it's careful what you ask for. It's like, hey, we just want to pay for what we use, and then all of a sudden you realize you're using a lot, and you want to go back to certain models. So I think it is a balance of predictability and flexibility that honestly I don't believe we've figured out just yet, which is kind of the fun part so far.
All right. Another, like Koen said it, like when I asked difference in the region, so we have North America saying we just jumped on the cloud, and now Rick is adding like they're of course with everything they're dealing with some downsides with the cost. I heard Koen saying Europe is leading in some parts. I thought Europe was just scratching the surface, but Europe is really taking a lead role on some sections.
Well, I think Europe has been, if you just look at the numbers, right? I think adapting cloud technology, but like overall, like software as a service, etc. Mm-hmm. But that's just like utilizing like a Workday system or Salesforce or Ariba. It has been around, right? So I think all say this is cloud technology, that's what Europe is leaning on. If you look at pure migration of data loads, we're slightly ahead. But then if you really look at what do I do with it, like, and introduce this new business model. So I gave examples in there, but this is 1 out of 10 companies. So if you look at the US, you would probably find 3 out of 10 companies. Right? So there's really a different maturity on the curve on how people see it. And I think that's why we call it a continuum. Right? And in a way, you cannot jump steps over, right? So you can design new business models, but you need to be on the cloud to enable them. So I think Mary used the thing migrate, accelerate, innovate, right? Which we kind of used. Well, but you cannot just I migrate and then I will start thinking about what do I innovate on. But it's think about innovation and then migrate, which is relevant for the innovation. Right? So that's the blend. I'm pretty convinced not everything needs to be on the cloud. Think about just kind of military data or like data on nuclear plants. I'm not sure I want to be on the cloud. Right? You never know.
Yeah.
So that's the cloud sovereignty. So I think every region has its specifics, and we'll have to see what sovereign cloud means to Europe.
Okay. And what do you think is general question to you all? What do you think if you say 1 out of 10, 3 out of 10 in US? I heard Mary saying, well, at a certain point it was just let's go. It's all cloud. There's still low numbers, even though we are now in OpenSlava. It's cloud all around, and we're partying around the cloud. And we're putting emojis in the chat, which is good. But what is you can do it 2 ways. What is stopping, you think, businesses from moving forward that we don't have 5 out of 10 or 6 out of 10? Because there's so many benefits that you also elaborated, Koen, in your presentation or your keynote. What do you think stopping them, or what are the things, the real benefits, the rain that could trigger people that are watching right now inside a business, running a business, to say like, I need to move forward?
I think for me, I think we're not doing a great job sometimes as like a system integrator or a consulting company or educating our customers on the value story. Right? So sometimes we're a bit stuck ourselves on the cost play.
Yeah.
Right? And then so I had a chat, with a CIO of a Belgian company, and I said to him like, well, you have to kind of move to the cloud in there because with COVID, like you don't have like stores, right? So using retailers, so you need to have like an online channel. And the guy said to me, why would I move to the cloud? I have like 5 SAP systems, which we don't touch anymore. They're running on a data center, which is completely written off. Right? Yeah. So I don't see any benefit of moving to the cloud because it doesn't cost me anything anymore.
Yeah.
Right? So that's one reason why people don't go there. They're still like, oh, it's still depreciated. I don't need to do anything. Moving to the cloud is more expensive. But then we say, well, yeah, but then I would still be a caveman. If you never come out of your cave and you don't innovate, I would still be running around half naked, like shooting mammoths.
Well,
so I think
and that's, I mean, to add to that, sorry, interrupt, but
go ahead.
No, it's this is why for me, it is about how you want to consume it, right? No more than distributed took away the mainframe, and more than, public cloud took away our data centers, and no more than quantum's going to break everything else. For me, what it means to be hybrid is going to wherever the workloads need to be and picking the right tool for the right job. I mean, we hear that SAP discussion a lot. I mean, I don't blame them. It took them, probably 3 years to deploy it. So why would they want to now migrate that if it's working? In the US, in the oil and gas industry, and probably everywhere, there are still agents running on pipelines that are based on Windows 3.1, and they'll use the same type of mentality. It's not broken. And it's such a minor thing that it's having to do. So there's, moving to cloud to me is still about giving flexibility in how you consume, period, right? You don't want to necessarily do traditional enterprise agreements all the time, or, ELAs or those types of things. You want to pick and choose how you consume things based on what that workload is and based on what level of the stack it is. And so that's why I agree wholeheartedly with what you were saying. And it's sort of the approach we try to take here with our stuff.
So I work mostly with financial services companies, and the thing stopping them when they're not moving is they're really concerned about data privacy. Any major data leakage would be a significant business problem for them. So like when they don't go or when they move very slowly, it's almost always about data.
Yeah, I will say just kind of the counterpoint on that. I mean, I agree with all these holdbacks, but at the same time, we see time and time again those who aren't moving, especially as we've gone through this pandemic, they don't have that resiliency, they don't have the flexibility, and it becomes very obvious, and even the security angle of it, right? Is it going to be more effective, to go with a cloud provider that can reduce some of the security risks, or roll the security yourself? And so I think there are counterpoints to all of those, but I agree those are the kind of the big holdbacks for companies that we still see tiptoeing into the cloud.
And if
I just may add, Marnik, to what Rick was saying. So in financial services, what we see in Europe a lot is kind of really the dependency on the technical debt that the mainframe brings with them, because they're they're still on AS400. Right? So bringing that stuff to the cloud, I don't want to kind of rewrite my code of my mainframe, which is millions of lines of code, but I think that's going to change, right? So, I'm actually we're working together with some of the partners which are sitting here in this call on setting up a mainframe cloudification capability as step number 1, and then step number 2 is to gradually containerize the mainframes, and make sure that we can replace the apps. But one of our industry key plays for this fiscal year is reinvent the future of core banking, which is all going to be about, core banking, retail banking, how to kind of get rid of the technical debt, but do it in a way that this thing doesn't fall over, right? Because if the mainframe breaks down, a lot of the big banks are in deep shit. Right? And that's another reason why people don't go there. Because of the afraid of breaking things and causing business disruption.
Okay, so I'm hearing you all say not just about the financial service, but in general, the reason it's 1 out of 10, it's 5 out of 10. There are a lot of people like yourselves convinced we have to move there. There's so much benefit in there. We're going to dive a bit deeper in the benefits, the rain as we're talking about. But now you see fear of having to reinvent, hearing Chris saying, well, we paid for everything. So why should we replace and invest again? I hear Koen saying, well, I would still be in my cave. Funny saying with a skeleton in your background, but it'd still be in my cave. I hear the security from Rick, which we're going to dive into a second. But from your expertise, if I'm the audience right now, and we have multiple disciplines that they are in. Either they're a developer, they're responsible for the whole IT team, they're maybe leading cloud somewhere, or they're in more business type function. Financial services and beyond, what would you recommend on getting them to speed up, to counter that fear, counter that, but I'm not going to do it, but I paid it off, but we have SAP, but. What would your suggestion or recommendation be?
Well, I think you can point out, it's a pretty common example I think we've all heard, but do you really know where your competition is coming from as your business, right? I mean, we've all heard it. The largest hotel chain on the planet now doesn't own any rooms. The largest taxi company doesn't own any cars. What can happen to what it is that you're doing? And so you kind of have to balance, I guess, confidence that you're number one or whatever in your industry with, someone can eventually out innovate you by thinking outside the box. And maybe even that includes taking advantage of certain regulations, right? That where there were none that causes some to be made, right? If you look at what's happening in certain countries with like Uber and even Netflix and others. And so I think it's almost creating a certain level of what is your business? And are you sure that it's that secure? And are there other things that you should maybe consider to move forward with at a higher velocity, as it were?
Okay, I agree with that. It's about the business, right? It's about how quickly can you get new products to market? How can you affect your bottom line? How can you better communicate with your customers? And if you didn't, to be honest, if companies didn't figure this out during the pandemic, that they have to be able to be agile enough to communicate with your customers in different ways, then they might be a lost cause. They should definitely, but that should be the driver, right? if your competitors, your competition, just like Chris said, if they're on the cloud and moving quicker, then you're falling further and further behind.
I'll add another angle to this. I absolutely agree with everything around the customer, consumer, rapid solution development. How do you accelerate that? But on the other side too, there is a war for technical talent out there. And if you're not in the kind of current day mode, right? Developers want to be doing cloud native, right? And I think we're seeing more and more of a shift for both the technical talent to deliver technology, and then also, thinking about tools for the workforce, right? Who wants to, do all the dull, dirty, dangerous work, when you move to the cloud, that allows you to enable employees as well with new tools and capabilities.
Good one. So I'm hearing, one, you don't want to be out competited by your competitors and be surprised and be like, oh my God, what the hell is going on? Even Rick is saying, well, if you haven't figured it out yet, then there's something wrong. And I hear Mary saying, well, also look at the people, because there's so much repetitive work, unsecure work, things going on that could be more efficient, and we could solve that in some way with the cloud. Those are the things that the audience can take to their business or to their careers, into moving them further away from just saying, well, we paid everything, or it's working, has been working for 20 years like this. Let's just keep it. This is the same in financial services, because we talked about it in the prep of this panel, and not to stereotype, but also my experience, financial services is still a very secure, strict business that is like, it has been working for years and it will still keep working, and we can't just tamper around and do new stuff because it's cool and it might help. How do you see that, or what's happening there?
Well, they're facing competitive pressure too. So okay. I was senior vice president at MasterCard for cloud infrastructure, so I have some direct experience with this. But yeah, there's direct pressure. If you're a brick and mortar bank, then there are online banks like Bank in the Netherlands that are competing with you with much lower costs, with adding features to customers. I mean, there's a significant drive to modernize before you don't exist.
Okay, so even there, even if you take the banking, it's pretty.
Even the most the most conservative banks, even banks connected to that are part of grocery store chains, they're all thinking about how to survive in a world where they have new competitors that aren't tied to the same things, the same past that they are, and not to mention new forms of payment, mobile payments, things coming out of places like China, where they with WePay, where they and Alipay, where they've just skipped the card rails and they've gone straight to something new. And those are now being accepted. You could go to Louis Vuitton and they're going to accept Alipay. Yeah. So that is direct pressure on companies like MasterCard and Visa.
Yeah, okay. Consumer expectations have changed, right? And they're driving behaviors, right? And they're driving disruption. So yeah, absolutely agree.
So that's if you're looking back, related back to the title of this panel, what you're saying also for the audience is, if you get pushback from whatever business you're in and you want to move forward and you're inspired and you want to really drive cloud continuum, like Koen calls it, one of the things is also that what Mary said, you have the consumer wants it faster, wants it better, wants it easier, and has no business in hearing you say what our mainframe needs to go through 1 million lines of code before we can get your payment there. And those are good things to say, well, it's not just us wanting it, it's the consumer, or you get pushed out of the market.
I mean, think about the industries where you have the worst experiences, right? Banks, healthcare, right? Mm-hmm. Those are all just ripe for disruption, and cloud can help with that.
Okay.
That's interesting. You mentioned kind of health. So I just came out of a strategy session with our European Management Committee. So the key areas for us to focus on are banking, digital healthcare, energy transition, and consumer goods and associated supply chain. Right? So those are the areas where we believe there's a lot of rain, right, to be made. Yeah. Where we can fundamentally change the way how we do healthcare or how we order, or go to some stuff. And I think those are a bit the 4 areas, right, where we kind of believe, and well, we have 19 industries identified, right? So one could argue, yeah, chemicals is also important, and oil and gas upstream is important. It's true, but I think these are the ones I think that are very consumer intense, and where you as an end user will see most of the benefit from increased kind of customer service. And cloud is just indispensable because it just needs to knit everything together to offer you that experience.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I don't want to repeat everything that you're saying, but I'm summarizing what I'm hearing in this panel also for the audience to see what we're saying. So we moved from, hey grandma, the cloud is using your friend's computer and having no limits, like Chris said, and it's all about how you use it. And if you want to do it, businesses are really, we have 1 out of 10 in Europe, we have 3 out of 10 in the US. US went really quick, but then Rick said you have to take into the cost, but everybody needs to move or tries to move in a certain way to bring value to the cloud. But they're stopping definitely in more traditional environments like banking, healthcare, because they have everything figured out, or we have done it in a certain way I don't want to change, or they want to stay in their cave. And you're saying, well, just look at the consumer, but before you know it, a Netflix-like company comes, outperforms you, and the consumer is like, well, I can get my money in a nanosecond, and you're making me wait 30 minutes. So they can only use those tools in their own businesses. And then I heard Rick talking about, well, but there's one big thing that definitely is hot and trending in Europe. It's regulations. And from my personal experience, like I said, I'm not an expert in this topic, but we went from it's a free-for-all to the European Union in this case. I don't know, Mary, how it is in the US, but the European Union saying, hey, data and privacy, super important. You will go to jail. I'm just exaggerating a bit, but you will go to jail if you leak one phone number. Then COVID came and there was no data and privacy because I had to write in every restaurant all my data and it was just flying around, no problem at all. And then now we're moving further. What's the market doing? How is cloud impacted? How are businesses looking towards this? Definitely in Europe, maybe also the US, concerning that data privacy, stricter regulations.
Well,
To the general.
let me try to speak from some personal experience, right? Mm-hmm. My wife works for a government institute, right? And well, you're from Belgium, so we know we have like more kind of governments than people in this country.
Exactly.
Right? But we really have government institutions that are stopping all their migration to the cloud because they say, well, I don't want to have the data from the federal government sitting with AWS because in one day there's a war. Mm-hmm. They know everything about the people, they know everything about the ages, the demographics, etc. So we have to figure this out, right? Because I don't want the US to have access to our data.
Yeah.
Now, there's several ways how to deal with it, right? There's people saying, well, we create encryption kind of levels. You need to have specific keys. We will only allow physical access by Belgian nationals to the institutions, right? But then people are saying, well, we're not sure that this is enough, right? So if I keep it on-prem and everything sits with me, it's safe. Well, I don't think anything is safe, right? Because there's hackers all over the place. So unless you don't do internet anymore, unless you actually kind of go back to the Middle Ages and put your computer in the cave. Now, yeah, that doesn't work like Middle Ages caves, you know, and computers, but you get the point.
Yeah.
There is no such thing as absolute safety. Getting your laptop stolen on the train to Paris, where you have a file with kind of personnel data from a data migration, is not safe either. So I do think there's a lot of education that needs to happen. I think someone mentioned it from the panel as well. I think that Google or Amazon or Microsoft, right? They can actually do safety much more than anyone else can. They do their safety, but it's just about the trust. And I think that I see a potential slowdown in Europe because we never know if Europe is serious on saying, well, it's a real regulation for these type of services. It cannot be accessed, the data cannot sit outside of the country, or if it's just going to be, you need to take some measures into consideration. And I think the next year and a half is going to be quite interesting to see where this thing is going in Europe. But for the moment, I think it is slowing down kind of the cloud adoption. And I think it's more based on perceived panic and trust than it's based on reality.
So you mentioned something that I think is important, at least in some of the stuff I do, is that the data sovereignty and data nationalism. Certain kinds of data can't leave the country. Financial data from transactions can't leave the country. Whether that's good or bad doesn't really matter. It's happening, and if you're a global company, a finance company that's to deal with this, then that is driving you to be more cloud native, more agile, because you have to be able to react. If you have your data sitting in AWS, let's say you've made the move, but that AWS is in Singapore, and now India is saying the data can't leave, then you have to be able to quickly adapt to meet those regulations. So it's driving companies to modernize out of fear of regulatory compliance changes.
Okay. How do you see that, Mary, in the US?
Yeah, I mean, I think the hyperscalers, it's core to their, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, it's core to their business to be on top of the regulation. So in some ways, I think here in the US, I live in California, for example, it's a little bit different story around data privacy. And so being able to have that, as Rick mentioned, that flexibility, being prepared for changes in regulation, the relying on some of the investment that the hyperscalers are putting around security and regulatory concerns, I think that is often more than what an individual company could put toward it themselves, right? So I think there are always exceptions, right? There are always nuances to everything, but I think in general it actually helps reduce some of the security risks. It helps with some of the scale, from a global perspective to actually work with those hyperscalers, but, understand the, individual countries having different concerns, outside of the US with that approach.
Okay. So if I understand it correctly, what we're saying is in Europe, it's a strict business, but it's also a very vague business. Like Koen said, if you just look at Belgium, what was going on, let's do it on a European scale. And it's more of a trust issue, which I find really interesting from my point. So what we're saying also to the audience is we shouldn't just focus on everything cloud and pushing it forward. And yes, going through the mindset of, is my data secure and what is going on and what with these, hyperscalers. But also more campaign, like Koen said, well, not all the information you're getting is right. So just don't push it back for the sake that you heard it somewhere that it's dangerous, because it can offer a lot of opportunity. Rick also said, well, if you want to be flexible, then these things could help you be flexible. And Mary said, okay, there's a difference between US and Europe. But in the end, they also have the best interest in mind, being like, hey, we need to be agile here. We need to be secure. We need to take into account all these different regulations globally, because if we wouldn't be doing that, we wouldn't have a business. So we're really working on a trust mindset turning point for businesses. I see nodding face. That's good. Now I feel smart. Like, yes, Mark, you're saying sensible stuff. Let's for a second, looking at the time, because we still have around just over 50 minutes. Also for the people in chat, I'm going to refresh real quick. If you want me to ask questions, do it now. We have around 15-20 minutes left, so let me know. But let's do a perfect world. Let's say a perfect world that people have been watching this panel, and all the people watching are in their businesses, working really hard, getting things done, building that trust, making sure that even though there's a lot of pushback, people say, like, yes, we got to move to the cloud. We got to keep migrating, innovating, doing that. And then they have their data over there. And what I also see from my perspective when we work with clients is, and then we have data. And let's say we have all our stuff in the cloud. But then most of the time it's like, well, it's there. It's secure and it's sitting there. But is there a way to go a bit further and really take that data capital and turn it into something valuable that actually can help the business? Because in my experience, most of the businesses are just sitting on this big mountain of data that they either have on a mainframe or in a cloud and then do nothing. How do you see that?
Well, I mean, obviously, well, first of all, a perfect world. I mean, that's why they restarted the Matrix 8 times. We can't deal with that. This is where you're kind of, I think, touching into a lot of the AI ML space in particular, and making some sense of that. I think a lot of folks they just get overwhelmed. I think Rick touched on it a little bit at the very beginning. It's a lot. I mean, because you got to know what questions you even want to ask. I mean, data is just data. It's neither good or bad. What do you want to gain insight from it with? And I think that's an actual struggle that will probably always be a struggle, at least in our lifetime, because we just keep getting more and more data. And unless we can get some sort of good AI ML models that are constantly thinking about it, as it were, I believe it's going to be a tough road ahead. But I'd be interested in what other folks are seeing as well.
Well, I think everyone wants they view their all their data as a gold mine that they're trying to figure out how to get the gold out of the ground. But they're also extremely worried about what their customers will think if it's revealed how they're using and how they're selling their data. So I think it's kind of like a minefield with a gold field in it. So, yeah. And I think that's stopping a lot of people's, how do you do this without looking like you're stepping on the privacy of your customers and killing other parts of your business?
Yeah, I do think there is a shift coming. We talked about consumer expectations. I do think there is a shift coming. It's not here yet, but around people owning their own data, right? And I think that will be, I could tell you, right, that all the companies that have what they think are my data, and they're using it to their, the best of their ability, presumably, right? Hopefully on the cloud, and using some AI services and machine learning around it. But at the end of the day, if I dig into like what each company, what does Amazon really think I am? They're probably wrong. And I'd happily give them better data if they'd give me better services. I think companies haven't quite figured out how to unlock that yet. But I think it is a real concern of, what is that trade-off? Who owns the data? Even if you think about a supply chain, right? Who owns, think about automotive, right? Who really owns the data? Is it the company that has the seats that's gathering all the data about you? Is it the car? Is it the OEM, the car manufacturer? Is it the dealer? Like, who owns that customer and their data? Creating that 360 view. I think as we move to the cloud, we're going to get closer to it with some of the services around it, but there's still a long way to go to get that right.
All right.
I like what Mary, you bring a good point. I think people are willing, to give up the privacy is a big word, but I think it's easier if you get something in return. I explain, I'm a very pragmatic type of guy, and I look at, I think great ideas, they come from irritation, and I get irritated a lot. So for example, I have a 21-year-old daughter. She just has a driver's license. What does the insurance company say? By default, you're a dangerous driver, so your kind of all risk premium is sky high, right? How do they know, right? They don't know. So we're saying it's like, what if the insurance company of the future, and they do it in some countries, they say, hey, if I can install a black box in your car, right? But I don't store your data. So your dad doesn't know that you've been hanging out at 4 a.m. in the morning in a bar, right? But I am streaming your data. I do an overlay with Waze or with Google Maps, so I know what was kind of the speed limit, how fast were you going, did you stop at the stop sign, and it dynamically calculates the score. And she would be rewarded, with a lower kind of premium if she sticks to it. Well, number one, you will get less accidents on the roads because people will incentivize to drive safer. Insurance companies need to kind of pay much less indemnities, to some folks, etc. And she's willing to give up some privacy, which is not really privacy because we're going to do it through streaming data, which only cloud can handle with, to give something back to her. Then I think that's the right narrative to have, right? But and this has nothing to do with like I'm getting data from your social media profile, and then I profile you and you're stigmatized on this is who you are. But I think just using technology with this data to reinvent kind of risk premium calculation as a new business model, I think that's the first step that people need to come. In my experience, I don't think a lot of people are thinking about the use cases around data. We're too busy implementing data warehouses, you know, like BI and BW, which is just static data, and data is just reporting of the past.
Yeah.
And I think now combining data from ERP systems together with kind of streaming data and GPS data from trucks, I think we can redesign supply chains and create new business models. So data is the new currency, right? For sure.
Okay, so is then for the audience, is then the first step in everything, moving those companies, like you said, 5 out of 10, 1 out of 10 in Europe, is it then evangelizing, in this case of data, evangelizing the fact that these are the possibilities on the cloud if your data is there? The first thing you need to realize is what Mary and Koen is saying is, what are you doing with it? Do you think about first who owns, like Mary said, who owns the data? Do you know where it is? That's the first one. Who owns it? Who are all the different parties involved? What do you know about them? And then, like Koen said, just don't sit on it and be like, yes, we have a lot of data. Now what? What are you doing with it? And then you give the example of the insurance, what I think is a really great example. I really love it, because what you do there is a bit the trusting, Koen. What you said also with the government, you're not just saying to your consumer as a business, hey, we want to store data, but we want to store data, and this particular data, because we're going to incentivize you and we're going to do it with this. And I can imagine a consumer saying, well, if you say that, then you can have it. I think it's the same with social media. And this is just my opinion. Like I said, I'm not an expert, but this is what I'm hearing. Social media also, oh my God, they're storing my data. You can have a bit because I want to use all the different social media, but nobody knows exactly what it's used for. But if you communicate about it and show them how our life, look at what you have on your phone, how much handy stuff you have because they have your data of your location and all that stuff, then people are more open to it. So do I understand it correctly that that is your go-to thing if we want to turn data into a pile of something, into value, that business should look at it that way? Or did I misinterpret it?
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Summarized it well.
I think that's a really cool one. I think if also people watching now can go to their businesses or their employers or their teams that way, I think you can turn data into something. Unless Chris says, I have 3 more strategies that I would like to share.
No, but I will say, I think it would be naive to say we know all the strategies. I mean, there's going to be certain things that are going to appear as we learn more that we haven't even thought about yet. And I think part of the key in any of these moves to cloud and any of these app modernizations, pick your buzzword du jour, I think it's important to be open as much as you can to different things and different possibilities. We talked about earlier the moving. To me, it is just, don't be closed-minded. That's the thing I would say. Don't just worry about protecting what is here today. Be more of a classic engineer, right? An engineer doesn't say if it's not broke, don't fix it. They say break it and make it better. Paraphrasing, Henry Ford said, if I'd asked people what they wanted, they'd have told me to make a better horse, right? Or something like that. And I think that's kind of where we are with things. So it'll be interesting to see what the next few years brings forth.
Okay. I'm just thinking it would be cool if some people are watching right now and you're responsible for IT and you just come in. I'm here to break stuff. They told me at OpenSlava to break stuff, but I'm going to fix it and it will be good. But I understand what you're saying. I love it. Moving forward and linking it a bit to what also Mary touched upon 20 minutes back was, okay, again, perfect world. We are moving to the cloud. We're moving faster. We're taking away that fear. We're breaking stuff, like Chris says, and we're going to make it better, not sit in our cave like Koen. And then we're going to not sit on our data, but we're going to actually add value and have that mindset of how can we serve the customer better, also to not be outperformed. But then Mary also touched upon it, is there's a big skill gap is not the right word, but there's so much new skill needed. It goes so fast that it's really hard to keep up with everything that we're talking about. How do you see this move to the cloud, this continuum, as Koen called it in his keynote, affect the workplace, affect HR, the skills that the audience here today watching need to learn, how they need to act to move all of this that we discussed forward?
I think I'll just give my personal example, right? And my personal experience. So when I got a phone call from our CEO literally a year ago saying, Koen, we want you to set up and lead cloud first for Europe, I was laughing profoundly because I said, I don't know crap about the cloud.
There you go.
And I kind of thought, and then so I think you're confusing me with another Koen or Koenraad, right? Because I don't know anything about a cloud. And they said, well, exactly, that's why we want you. And I said, okay, well, you may need to double click on this, right? And they said, well, we don't want an infrastructure person leading our cloud first business. We don't want our Google guy to lead the business. We don't want our software engineering guy to lead the business, because the technology people will think about the technology. But I was leading our resources practice, right? Chemicals, oil, gas, metals, mining, everything which is stinky and remote, right, was with me.
Yeah.
So they said, we want a business guy who can think about what to do with it. And I think that is for me the key. It's rotating your talent from thinking about, I'm an SAP guy, to I'm a person who's going to kind of reinvent core banking.
There you go.
Which is full stack. So don't stick to the application. Don't stick to, I'm in system integration, but I don't do outsourcing. All these boundaries are blurring. So I think we need to be innovators that think about exactly what we said a couple of times. What the hell do I do with it? Right? And how do I put it to value? How do I put it to purpose? So I think what I see, and this is the big challenge that we're discussing, that is, how do we rotate our talent to think multidisciplinary around business problems and sustainability and energy transition, right? As opposed to like, how can I program COBOL faster?
Yeah.
Right? So I think it's that play, and I think it really has a lot of kind of implications on talent.
So I think I have kind of a different view. But before cloud, at large enterprises that I worked at, if a developer was starting a new project, he'd go in and tell the infrastructure team, I need this exact version of Tomcat. I need my CPUs to be this strong. I need for my database to perform, I need these many spinning platters. And when you move to completely cloud native on cloud, you should really just be writing your business logic, and it really frees you up not to worry about those things that you should have never had to worry about. The infrastructure should just work. Whether it's PaaS or IaaS, it should just work and just be there, and you shouldn't have to think about it. So you should be able to focus on the skills that actually add the most value to you, and not skills that are outside of being a developer, such as knowing what version of Tomcat you need to run a simple Java app.
Yeah, I'd echo what Rick is. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mary.
No, go ahead. I'll tell you.
I'll echo what Rick is saying. We see the same thing. I mean, developers just want to write Angry Birds, right? I mean, at the end of the day, they don't want to deal with anything else. And so going back to what I said at the very beginning, it's about making it easy to consume. And it's never actually been easier to learn. There's 100 and some services sitting out on Amazon today. You don't have to do anything except click on them, see if they fit what you need, and move on to the next one if they don't. You don't worry about a lot of no different than you don't really think about the plumbing in your home unless there's a leak. You don't think about the power running through your home unless a rat or something chews through the wire, I guess. But it's always there. So I kind of agree with Rick as well on that one. Sorry, Mary.
Yeah, no, I was going to chime in and kind of build on that too. If you think about cloud, it's not just the technology that sits behind it. It's also, if you're really being cloud native, right? It's a different way of working, right? It's a more agile. It's developing, not have to worry about what Tomcat server, right? It's really, DevOps. It's being data driven, and I would say we're starting to see a shift. When we think about building out innovation capabilities, from taking a project mindset, right? It used to be the waterfall requirements, et cetera, right? To saying, hey, let's be data driven. Let's try something out. Let's move quickly, and you can do that because of the cloud. So instead of having that project mindset, being product, taking a product mindset and saying, how are we going to build the right thing for our consumer, right? How are we going to build the right app? How are we going to build it? And being able to do it, spin up, we've been spinning up businesses for some of our clients in a matter of weeks, right? Spin up a business, try it out, get the consumer data, get the insights, pivot, move quickly, keep iterating, right? And I think that mode of working, we need a shift in the workforce to be able to work in that way. But as companies leverage the cloud and start adopting cloud native practices, you're going to start to see a shift in businesses being able to move more quickly.
Okay. I like the fact, like most panels is always like, I agree with you. I agree with you. This is, I like that they're different point of views. Never know who's right. The future will tell, but that's what I love. From my own perspective, like I said, nobody's here to listen to me. But for my industry, I think is really interesting. I see both. One, I can understand that what you're good at, you need to focus on, and definitely because cloud, like Chris is saying, is providing you to live in a world that you don't fix the sink. If it's not broken, you can just wash yourself and go on your business. That's the whole reason that we're promoting. This is maybe a bad word, but they were talking about this. But I also can join in with Koen, because the number one thing that I work with is teams of developers and ITers that are becoming frustrated because they can't move the business forward with everything that we talked about in this panel, and they keep bumping into those walls. And there you can ask, do we need someone else in the workforce that can break through those walls so the developer can be the developer? Or should people that are watching right now ask themselves, how can I pivot my skills a bit to make sure that I am the one punching through the wall plus developing? Who's right? I don't know, but those are indeed the both things that I see. Looking at the timing, we got 2 more minutes. So much to talk about. 2 more minutes. Last question. And like I said, call it a cliche, but we're talking about OpenSlava here. And OpenSlava is about innovation, moving forward, that people walk out of here after 3 days inspired. Looking at everything talked about, looking at your business, looking at, it's not about the clouds, it's about the rain. I'm going to start with Mary, because you're the first box in my backstage. All 4 of you, what is the number one thing that is happening right now or will happen in the future? I know you don't have a glass ball, but what is it for you that you say, this is something you need to keep an eye on, and this is really what I'm excited about, what's happening right now? What is that for you? Mary is thinking, why did you start with me?
No, there's so many. There's so many. I mean, being an innovator, right? I think all the things we talked about, innovation, but just because you didn't touch on it, I think some of the responsible business and the sustainability aspect of it, right? Really being able to, think about how we're more green and how we use the cloud to achieve that. There's some just really great data. If we're doing that migration to the public cloud, being able to reduce CO2 emissions to the point, taking 22 million cars off the road, right, as an equivalency. I think we're just scratching the surface on that. And so I would love to see more around how we utilize the cloud, to get to net zero and sustainability and more responsible business.
Nice. So the rain for you coming is sustainability, getting, like, for example, the cars thing is a great example of what cloud could do. All right, Rick, what do you think? Well,
for me, everything is about the march to serverless. It's just the most efficient. Everything about cloud native is taking us to where you just write this quickly. And in a world where maybe you can't move data, maybe logic has to move to where data exists so that it can act upon it, then you need something like serverless to deal with that in this new regulatory nationalistic world. So I think for me, it's everything we're doing now is getting ready for a world where we just have functions as a service, where it's so easy to write and deploy software and you don't worry about anything else. Everything else is below the value line, adds no value.
Okay, nice. All right, Chris, tell me.
I don't have much to add to Rick. He went where I was probably going to go with it, especially on the functions as a service. I mean, and if you keep using the automotive example and things at the edge, I mean, you got to make decisions quickly and in a very defined problem space a lot of times. And you don't want any latency going all the way back to the data center to do that. And so you want to process things that are right there in front of you.
Okay. And then we kicked off OpenSlava and initiated this panel with Koen's keynote. And so Koen, the final word here, what are you excited about? What are you looking forward to? What is the thing that you're going to focus on? I think you have yourself on mute. There you go.
Sorry. I think for me, it's really all about my aha moment is leading by industry in there, really looking at how do we change industries. Don't get stuck on this is ERP, this is this, this is that. Think about how to change entire industries and how technology can help you to get there. I think that's the thing that excites me, right? And that's where I think the future is going to be going towards.
Okay, cool. So I hear less cars, less servers, and we're gonna rattle the whole industry. Our time is up. So much more to talk about, but I want to thank you so much of touching upon so many different topics, and I hope for also the audience it inspired them to think differently about their role, think differently about regulations, about where it's going, and how they can change that industry and make a sustainable impact on themselves as a career, as someone active in this business, or on the businesses that they're working on. Thank you so much. Also for people in chat, give them a digital applause. Of course, you can't hear it, but show your excitement. Thank you again. Hope if you stay, enjoy the rest of the program. And if you go back to your business, enjoy your day. I want to thank you, Koen, Mary, Chris, and Rick. All right.
Thank you for moving us along, Marnik. You did great.
No problem. I learned a lot. I'm going to talk to my grandma in a second.
Thanks, guys.
Okay. And we're gonna move straight forward because in my backstage, it's really crowded in my backstage. So many people here. We're gonna move forward for the next talk, and the next talk, and also for the people watching YouTube, Facebook. Thank you for joining, being here. Keep the chat going. If you're walking around on the VSF, have fun. Check the people around, talk to the partners, or just stay here on stage one. I see the two gentlemen that are joining me for the talk. They're ready. They're looking pumped. I see thumbs up. I see beautiful backgrounds. It's going to be amazing. So I'm not going to spend too much time of taking time away from their talk, but we're going to have a duel. We're going to have a duel, and it's not going to be a duel. Maybe it is between the two gentlemen, because it's a duel of giants, and they are giants in their industry, but they're also going to talk about a duel between steering capability versus agility, if I pronounce it correctly, and I think it links perfectly to what we have been discussing also in the panel. The gentleman I'm talking about, and an important one for them is, and I'm already going to ask now because there's, like I said, there's always a delay on the chat, is they want to know what you think of their presentation straight afterwards. So of course you're going to get an OpenSlava survey, but let them know what you think in the chat. That's what they ask. They want straight feedback. They want to know how they rocked it. So let me know. I'll go through that. Just a heads up front. But without further ado, we're going to have a duel of giants between steering capability and versus agility. And we have Henrik Gruber and Martin Lehner. I hope that I pronounced the names right. From Accenture Solutions IQ. Gentlemen, I know you're ready. You look ready. The floor is yours. Take it away.
Hi, Monik. Thanks a lot. Thanks for the introduction. I mean, this really feels like within the boxing ring as you introduced everything else. So that's cool. So let's just start very quickly. So it sounds very complicated, but we were listening to the very last minutes of the former talk where you guys were talking about technology. And technology is being embedded in two other areas. One area is the money. And the money comes from the management, right? So that's what we need. So even though you're interested in technology, that's great, but you need some money that you can spend on it. And then there's a third part, and this is kind of the second part of the duel of the giants, that is agility, or in terms of that's the people. That's the people and the products that need to be created, right? Everything is embedded in technology, but we are now going to talk a bit about the other two giants, which is management with money, and which is agility with people and the products. So therefore, there is management in one corner of this boxing ring with a high demand for steering capability. They want control, okay? And in the other corner, there is the hopefully empowered agile product teams. They don't want to be controlled. They want to be empowered, and they would like to have they are motivated. They would like to have all of they do have the capabilities as well. And they would like to have everything to be empowered to build great products based on technology. And that's a fight which has been going on probably for centuries already. That there is always a bit of a drag from both directions. So this is what we're going to talk about. Martin, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks for having us. I'm the person on the right-hand side, Martin Lehner. Yeah, really happy to talk to you today about the problem Henrik just described. As you can see, when I'm not working for Accenture Solutions like you, I like to be outside. I like to travel a lot, but when I'm working for the firm, I typically work with products, people who want to build new products, people who love to build products, and that's why this topic is so fascinating for me.
Very quick introduction from my side as well. So the picture looks rather lame in comparison to yours, but
I chose it like that.
So for me, I think originally I was a technology guy. Kind of the fun fact is I grew up with Oracle technologies, and comparing it to the talk we're having right now, I was always fascinated by Oracle, in case you still know Oracle, that database company, but they changed during the recent years, or probably even 10 or 15 years ago. They bought lots of other companies, and the same kind of thing happened to me as well. I grew probably a bit from this particular technology more towards a products guy, because Oracle now is being known as a products guy. I mean, they have so many products. It's not just anymore the database itself. So technology is still at the core of everything, as well it is for me, but it is also kind of how to get companies to be successful and how to build great products. And very often, and this is kind of probably just the only reference to what you see in my background, is we're stumbling across the obvious. So we're trying to reach the stars, or we actually just stumble across very small aspects. But we're not going to talk about the small stones today. We're actually going to talk about the big things. I have the honor kind of to introduce in one corner management. And in one corner, there is the management demand for steering capability. What does that mean, right? So first of all, let's just stick to this kind of term a bit. So the thing is, we always need budgets, right? So we always need budgets so that we can spend them on the technology, on the people, on the great products. But the thing is, you can't necessarily plan it properly. And I think there is one thing which is particularly bad if management in this area or in this corner of the ring only talks to itself. And very often that is what happens. Senior managers get together for a couple of days, for a couple of weeks, and plan the budget for the next year. They haven't talked to any of the engineers. They haven't talked to any of those people capable of telling them what certain technologies cost, what certain implementations will cost. They don't even talk about some nice tweaks or whatsoever. They just plan the budgets, right? So this is very, very weird, because we plan something where we have no idea about how much things cost. We just base it on our empirical studies, meaning if you've spent that amount of money last year, let's add 10% and we're on the safe side, right? And this is kind of very loosely coupled to everything else. So therefore, when we think about it, it should be, there is a target we set, because that is something what we want to happen. That is a good thing. It's really great if we have an idea. So you could call it a vision, you could call it kind of a product idea, whatever that might be. So something we want to happen within the next couple of months and years. Then there is some kind of forecasting, what we think will happen, because there a couple of people might not be available. We need to scale up, all of these fancy terms. We need a certain technology that need to be implemented. We think that'll be done within a couple of weeks, right? Normally it might take a couple of months, but that'll be done in a week. Let's call that milestones and stuff like that. And then there's resource allocation. And we call it resource allocation because very often it is resource allocation. It is not you as a person, as an individual, but it is 25% of you. That is resource allocation for a particular kind of thing which we are going to build. And so this is what needs to be done, right? And then as a conclusion, always two things happen. This is, if I forecast more revenue for this product, for this project, for this thing we're going to build, I get more people. This is weird. I mean, this is called capitalism, I guess, but this is kind of weird because that means my company is going to grow and grow and grow and grow because, of course, the revenue I made last year will not be enough for next year. So we need to make more revenue. Therefore, I need more people. Or I could offer kind of cost reduction. That would work as well. But very often cost reduction has something to do with efficiency, meaning let's pick the amount of people we have and I get more resource out of them, like more percentage point for my project from them. So management is always interested in more revenue, then you get more people, or more cost reduction, then you get more of a share of a specific person. And as you can see in the title before we move on, there is something which we call kind of the evil guide to corporate success. And what that really means is something we'll show you in a second. When we go to the next slide, there is something which comes as a consequence. And this is really, we're feeding the devil, if you will, right? So if we do it this way, very often there is a hidden agenda which comes along. And this hidden agenda comes along due to this target setting, which we were talking about before, meaning I need more budget. Therefore, let's plan with a bit more budget because then I get more people. And if I get more people, then I will be more relevant within the company. When I become more relevant in the company, I will get more budget. And this is kind of weird, right? So therefore, forecast and resource allocation is one process. So this is one thing, and it is feeding the devil. The second thing is it's a rain dance. That's what we called it. Because first of all, it takes very long doing this rain dance. And there's a very funny story about rain dance. It's not so much about the weather, not anymore. It's about the dance. It's about coming up with the best dance ever. And the people will be occupied with themselves talking about the dance and what could be improved and what could be done, meaning how could we get more money? How could we get more people? How can we kind of not talk about the failures we've made in the past? Because otherwise we will not get that much budget in the future, stuff like that, right? It's not about changing the weather, getting anything kind of becoming better outside. It's really just about the dance. And therefore what we need, and still management, as you know, I introduced to you management needs control. It's not about the people have to enjoy their work. We can't measure that, right? So they come to work with a smiling face probably, but it doesn't change anything. Not necessarily they need to learn stuff that costs money. It doesn't bring me money on the short term. And it's not necessarily about the best product from a technology point of view. Don't tell me about technology. I'm looking for a product. Make it happen somehow, right? And if you use an old technology, because you can just copy and paste it, then just copy and paste it. We'll worry about the beauty of the product later. Do you recognize that? Right? We'll take care of that when there will be time in future. Then we will take care of these things. This is very often how management thinks, and I think we have to do something about that. Probably some of these aspects ring a bell to you. Martin, introduce the other contender.
Yeah, sure. I think this is a really interesting point of view that probably most of you guys, I would assume on this conference, listening to us, are maybe not part of the management. But as Henrik just described, this will sound familiar to you, we assume. This annual budgeting process when people try to gather some data and come up with a plan, which is not realistic. The other side I'm going to introduce to you now is what Henrik mentioned, is we have since, more or less exactly 20 years ago, the Agile Manifesto came out. It was like a big thing. People were talking about we have to change our engineering processes, and we have to follow these kind of principles. What you can see here right now. Typical things such as don't follow the plan, welcome the changing requirements. Put your energy on the motivated individuals and that they can work together on a daily basis as a self-organized team. All the kind of stuff supposedly changed the way how we do our products, how we build our products and engineer them. And probably most of you guys, you know this kind of principles. You have heard them in the one or the other training, or you read them on a blog. But these kind of principles most likely sound familiar. If not, they're supposed to describe agility on a very high level. What you cannot see here, because it was not part of the package, is a handbook how to implement it. So there is no guidance on, yep, I need to do these 10 steps and then I can be agile and I follow the Agile Manifesto and everything is fine. That doesn't exist. I mean, some of the frameworks, they try to describe a way, but it's never a conclusive thing. It's always just like there's lots of room for interpretation. So people and teams did what they needed to do. They came up with their own solution. And for some teams, what you can see here is maybe one version of how to implement agility. So what you can see here in the yellow box is this is the team. They have some people being responsible for building products, some people being responsible for testing, and they do it in an agile way. So they have some iterations, they try to talk with business a lot, and they try to have lots of conversations about the code and tests. This is obviously not a really advanced version of agility. If we have a look, for example, on other versions, we can already see that there are some teams, and maybe you and your team, you're part of one of these teams as well, being responsible from design to test to release, and you have kind of this feeling that this is your product already you're building. And I would assume only a few of you guys being part of a team, which we can see on the bottom, being really responsible from the opportunity selection down the road to the run when you maintain your product, being really an empowered product team and having all the skills you need on the team and also all the responsibility you need in order to come up and maintain a good product. And now you can imagine, I would assume, if you and your team, you're more like on the top part, then what Henrik described, the management processes, they're not such a big deal for you guys. Because you anyway, you get something, you build it, you test it, and it's good. But the more you are with your team on the bottom side, the more advanced you are in agility, the more it will be a hustle for you every year, every time when management try to deploy their steering capability, try to set some goals which are not really realistic anyway. So this is where we are today. We have waterfall goals, we have management processes which are decades old, and we try to implement agility in order to come up with better products and more customer value. So for us, and this was the reason for this talk, there is the question, are both demands reasonable? Yes, they are. And can they be incorporated? And we want to show you now one way of finding a common ground. And one of these ways could be that you start to use objectives and key results. It's this really funny thing because this is also 20 years old and even more. I mean, we're talking here about the people doing this in the 1980s, 1990s. So this is not really a new thing. It's really, really old. Still, it's a very effective method because it tells the management and the teams all together to come up with mutual outcome-oriented goals. We don't talk about a milestone saying something has to be released. We are talking about outcome-oriented goals. And every goal has a qualitative objective, and every goal has measurable key results, the things I can really measure out there, which describes the outcome. To make it easier for you guys, I brought you an example. It's really easy. Qualitative goal could be that I want our customers to buy more healthy chocolate. Measurable key results could be such as we increase sales of sugar-free chocolate on the best spots of more than 10%. Additionally, we want the sugar-free chocolate still earning more than 40% margin, and at least 50% of the sugar-free chocolate we sell should have a fair trade classification. So you can see here, it's not about how we get things done. This is solely up to the team. We talk here about what we want to achieve, what's the outcome we want to achieve. And this is a really an interesting thing because it changes how management and HR teams can collaborate. If it comes to target setting again, we can make use of OKRs in order to get two levels done. The first one is definitely that OKRs are set in co-creation, meaning top-down and bottom-up. There should be a co-creation about the objectives and key results we want to achieve, the stuff which needs to be done, the outcome we want to have. And the second part, and this is also a really interesting one, is we split the what from the how. There are these goals, these outcome-oriented goals, the objectives and key results, describing what kind of outcome we want to achieve. But it does not describe how we're going to do it. So there is no milestone plan based on releases anymore. This is solely up to the product teams that they think about to what kind of outcome-oriented goals, OKRs, they agreed on to achieve, and in what kind of time frame. And then they need to think about what needs to be done, what kind of opportunities do we have to follow in order to make it somehow realistic to achieve these goals. So we think about how will we get there. And this is really a different way of thinking about the steering capability and about agility when you work with objectives and key results, because it gives the power back to the team, but still puts the management in a place to decide on where to go. So Henrik just mentioned in the beginning that the target setting, the forecasting, and the resource allocation, these three, they all belong to the evil guide to corporate success. What objectives and key results can do is for sure not everything, but definitely it can help out with the target setting, help out the management and the empowered product teams to come to a mutual ground and to find goals together, and definitely split the what from the how. What it doesn't cover is the forecasting or the resource allocation. And as you can see here, we didn't bring a solution for that. Just brought some question marks. This still needs to be figured out, and maybe some organizations already figured out a way how to do it. I mean, there are lots of people talking about beyond budgeting. This is definitely a good way to go to find the solution. And what we want to encourage you now is, as our host mentioned, we would like to talk to you about this kind of stuff. Did you and your organization find a way to split target setting, forecasting, resource allocation from each other in order to make it move away from this evil guide, or couldn't you do that so far? Did any of you experience objectives and key results and can tell us what kind of outcome or even impact you could reach with this tool? Yeah, that would be kind of the questions we would be interested for.
All right. I presume you're done.
Thanks.
Yeah.
There you go. Thanks.
There you go. I was a bit doubtful. Like, is he ending or not? Should I jump in? But I'm just going to jump in. All right.
Kick him out.
Sure.
Yeah. Move. Next speaker. So, no, thank you so much, gentlemen. I really liked it. And now you're going to probably think, yeah, you have to say that because you're the host. But I really liked it because it touches upon what I believe generally is a big thing, definitely in the tech business, that you just, I really like the name that you call it, the evil guide to success. So I enjoyed it. I'm looking at the chat right here, and we're having some delays in there all day. So let's have that fixed. So if I can't, there you go. Someone's saying this conference was created bottom up. It's
That's good. Good.
And I presume that the questions you asked in the last slide were for the audience right now, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so if you're watching, like Marcel is the last one who reacted, so could you, for the audience, repeat them one more time what you want to know about the audience for the couple of minutes that we have?
Yeah, sure. So we talked about this opposing sides, and we would be interested, do you have this problem as well? Mm-hmm. Could you find a solution? Could you or your organization find a solution for this kind of problem? And what's your experience with objectives and key results?
All right. Let me check real quick. I have delays on there. So the question is, did you solve it? Did you do some stuff? Do you have some best cases? What metrics are you using? So if you are watching right now, you're like, I have the solution. I've been doing this for years. Guys, what are we talking about? I fixed this in my company. Then this is your time to shine. Meanwhile, while they're like, I have like 23 or 30 second delay, people have to think. So while we're doing that,
Yeah, sure.
what is coming in, my question to you on hearing all these things and also looking at the panel. I don't know if you followed the panel. It's not to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
No, yeah. They were talking at the end. They were a bit in disagreement when they were talking about what should be the skills and responsibilities of, for example, a developer, someone responsible for IT innovation. And Koen said, well, they need to expand a bit because, like you're saying, in the boardroom, when they need the budget, you can't just say, I want to work on my code because I'm not going to give you the money. This is the story you're telling. On the other hand, you had Rick saying, well, I don't necessarily agree because they need to be focusing on what they want to do, and someone else, and even with the whole cloud thing, it might disappear, that it will go by itself and they just focused on their business. What's your opinion linking this to your story?
That's pretty straightforward. I'm not sure if we have the same opinion, Martin. Let's see. So I would say you always have to sell your ideas, regardless what kind of developer, administrator, or whatever you are. So if you cannot sell your idea, whatever technologically great it is, you will not succeed. Therefore, you need some idea of kind of storytelling, understand what the budgeting situation is, salala, all of these things.
Okay, so you're saying, well, you got to do it. You can't move forward if you're not focusing also all on getting it done.
I can maybe cover the other side. It's not an answer for the engineers, but I think also the boardroom needs to change. Talking here about product orientation, and most board members have some kind of lawyer or business background, and actually there should be a chief product officer being responsible for the products they have and providing the competitive advantage for the company. But they don't. They just still have the same type of board members companies have typically.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then looking at chat, Marcel is, I don't know, I think it's meant for what you're saying, is that he says, are you not afraid for such opinions, with a big smiley face? And then he says heretics with another smiley face with his tongue out. I don't know. I presume he's talking about what you just said in your presentation. Are you not afraid for such opinions?
You mean the provocation?
Yeah, I think I think it's nothing new, right? What we've been talking about, and very often I think the conversation has to start. So probably we just took things for granted. All of us, we took things for granted for too long, right? Mm-hmm. So we always try to learn how management works. We always try to learn how the corporation works. Probably it is time to change all of that.
Okay, all right. And is there, like, I knew you give a whole presentation about that, but if you say, is it then just the metrics, or if you say, well, you need to sell your idea, you need to be able to push through those walls, is there other skills that our audience should think about, learn themselves, besides coming with the right metrics, like this is where I'm going, I'm going to cost save, or is it all about the metrics?
Storytelling.
Yeah, I was about to say exactly the same thing. So I mean, every great product. So I think, I'm not sure if that is related, but I think I haven't seen it, but there is a new documentary on Netflix, I think, about Google Earth. Mm-hmm. So as I said, I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
But if it is what I think about, it might be very compelling, because it's not about technology. I don't think it is about the technology, but I think it is about what you can do with the technology. I'm pretty sure there was some storytelling involved. And I think that is great, because so much is possible with technology. Sell it right, get the money for it, get the funding, and then do something great out of it.
There you go. I think that's a really good wrap up, because my backstage crew is saying, like, the next speaker is already ready. Is that I do like I said, it's not about me and it's not about my opinion, but I do agree. And also looking at what the people in the panel said is that they also said it's not about the technology, it's getting that mindset about regulations, about the trust, about moving forward that is important and that is pushing companies back. And what you're saying also inside the companies is, as a team that wants to move forward, how do you get the budget? And you need to have the metrics because that's how they measure, but you also need to be able to wrap it into a story. And what are we doing every day on OpenSlava? We're telling stories to inspire the people watching right now. So that being said, Henrik, Martin, I want to thank you so much for this inspirational presentation. I'm super happy that you agree on things. Let me know how the Netflix series goes because I also saw it. Put it in my list. I'm also going to watch it. Thank you so much. Continue dueling, and we'll maybe see each other next year to see what progress has been.
Absolutely.
Made.
Thanks for the invitation.
Give them a digital applause to the clapping emojis in the chat. Time flies when you're having fun, when you're being inspired, and we're already at the last speaker of the day. But the good news is that we have 2 more half days to go tomorrow and the day after, of course. And like I said, tomorrow will be tech deep dive, coding, the whole thing. Today was more into the business function, but you also see in these panel discussions and the previous speeches that how important it is to understand the business, because you want to get your projects through. You want to be able to do stuff. You want to get management on board. You want to get the money. You want to be the one that is evangelizing and storytelling their way through, because the more you get approval, the more cool things you can do, and the more chance there is that you're at next OpenSlava will be the one sharing your story. And I also see in my chat popping up in the 3D environment that we're still going for the Nintendo Switch. So if you're collecting all the badges and claim your award, remember, if you claim the award, you didn't get the Nintendo, you joined into the lottery, and just keep reminding you of that. But there's a big chance that you can win it, and it's already a big achievement if you get all the badges. Now, for the last speech of the day, is you asked for it, and you said, we saw him at the panel, can he come back? And we listened, because that's what we do at OpenSlava. We listened and we said, if they want Rick to come back, Rick will come back. And he's already smiling at me in the backstage. Rick from the panel, Rick Clark. He needs no more introduction. It's a bit like that Netflix show. My next guest needs no introduction of VMware. And he's going to close off this first beautiful afternoon at OpenSlava 2021 with open source. Are you doing it wrong? Rick, the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you. Hello, good afternoon, morning, evening, wherever it is in your time zone. Welcome to Open Source. Are you doing it wrong? I know that is an absolutely terrible title. I'm terrible at naming things. Hopefully the talk will be better than the name. Also, this is the first time I'm doing this talk, so I've tried to make it fit into a 30-minute slot. So together, let's find out if I succeeded. I probably didn't. My name is Rick Clark. I'm field CTO at VMware's Modern Application Business Unit, focusing on our Kubernetes product, Tanzu. Before COVID hit, I was lucky to be based in Amsterdam, but VMware brought me back to the US. And today I'm coming to you from my home office in Atlanta. And I look forward to seeing you all in person at next year's OpenSlava. So I have a deep open source background. So I've sort of been using open source and been doing open source for about 30 years. In the past, I led 2 of the largest open source projects, Ubuntu Server, where I was the distro lead, and OpenStack, where I was a founder and also project lead and chief architect for the first 2 releases. Now I advise some of the largest companies in the world on cloud, modern software development, and open source. I have noticed an alarming trend as I talk to enterprises over the last few years. I see engineering teams engaged in very large, complex, expensive development projects that they justify in the name of open source. Projects that would have never been undertaken otherwise, when in fact, the things that they are building, they're not open. They add very little or no value to the enterprise, and they're almost certainly creating massive amounts of technical debt. Sometimes they're vanity projects, CV building on the part of enterprise architects, and enterprise architecture is where I see most of these projects originating. Nevertheless, the execs that sponsor these projects are clueless that they're unnecessary and that they'll cost them later. And I've seen this sour companies on open source, causing them to miss out on the many advantages when they haven't really even tried open source. So I created this talk to help those execs make better decisions around what to build. Like I said, it's targeted at executives and decision makers, but hopefully if you're a developer and architect, you'll get something out of it too. I work mostly with financial services companies, so most of my examples are in that industry. So today we're going to talk about using open source correctly and how to know what to build and what to buy. I'll show you a simple tool that I use to help execs make the correct decisions. By the way, I'm using the term buy very loosely. Using a supported Linux distro that is free to download like Ubuntu counts as buying and not building for my purposes. Also, I won't be using any slides until the end, so you have to bear looking at me for the next 20 minutes or so. So what do I mean by doing open source? I think there are three main ways to interact with open source. I'll briefly explain them all before diving into the last one. The first way to interact with open source is contributing to open source. That could be anything from fixing a typo in the documentation to adding and maintaining a feature that is relevant to your business. Not enough people do this, but that's not what we're talking about today. The second is open sourcing something, and that's pretty self-explanatory, releasing and supporting an internal project that uses an open source license. And there's actually a lot to this if you want your project to be successful, but that would also be another complete talk. The third and most common by far is using or consuming open source, which is what we're going to talk about in more detail. So consuming or using can be broken down again in two ways. You can build something out of open source components, or you can use open source as a customer/end user, whether you pay or not. So starting with customer end user, a customer is someone who deploys an open source project or product without significantly modifying or building other things with it. For the customer and end user, though, not all open source projects are the same. There are differences, and you should know them before you make the decisions to buy or deploy open source. So some of the coolest open source projects, which maybe some of you are actually building right now, are produced by startups. They tend to be cutting edge, and they provide critical features often that help with a company's own innovation. But the rate of change might be high, and there's risk that the startup will fail, and you may not be able to influence development since they're usually not very openly developed. A couple of examples would be Calico by Tigera and Cilium by Isovalent. Both of these projects, they provide some cutting edge virtual networking and security features for containers, but will both survive. And what if you choose the one that doesn't survive? Can you imagine the difficulty involved in swapping out virtual networking in production? That is the definition of technical debt. And I'm sure it would take many months and cost millions of dollars, which I'm sure Accenture would be happy to help you with, but instead you should have them help you with something more useful. Other open source projects are run by big companies like Red Hat or VMware, where I work. Even Oracle runs open source projects. Generally, influence must be purchased. By that, I mean that you need to be an important customer to affect the roadmap and strategy. It's not terrible, but there's still a little risk, and the relationship is much closer to closed source software. An example of the risk is a large global bank that I know of built its deployment pipeline using an open source CI/CD tool. It was released by a large software company. That large software company then deprecated some of the features used by the bank before removing them completely. It was not in the vendor's strategic interest to keep those features in the product. This obviously created costly technical debt, but you can negotiate with the vendor to help you lower the cost of digging yourself out of the hole, which is what the bank did in this case. So the third way of using open source projects is a foundation project. These are projects run by large nonprofits that usually have wide industry representation. And examples are Linux from the Linux Foundation, OpenStack from the Open Infrastructure Foundation, and Kubernetes from the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. Foundation projects usually have a code repository that allows you to download and build the software, but they're not really productized, and they can take considerable technical skill to deploy and operate, especially around updates and bug fixes. But if the bank that I mentioned earlier had used a CI/CD tool released by a nonprofit foundation instead of a big company, then they could have used the open source community and found others that were interested in those features and worked together to actually influence the direction of the project much more easily than at the big company. Community-driven influence is one of the greatest things about open source. So there's also a variation of foundation-based open source, which I think is the sweet spot for most enterprises. And I call that a productized distribution of foundation projects. It's a mouthful, and like I said, I'm terrible at naming things, but basically it's an open source project that has been made into a product and is supported by a vendor. Examples include Ubuntu Server and RHEL, which are Linux distributions by Canonical and Red Hat, Tanzu and OpenShift and Rancher, they're Kubernetes distributions. Other examples are like Kafka from Confluent and Hadoop from Cloudera. These are by far the best way for an enterprise to consume open source software. You can both influence and contribute upstream to the upstream projects, and you can pay the vendor to represent you, or you can do both. So you have a lot of ways to interact with the project and make sure that it meets your needs. It mitigates the risk of a startup going under because you have the project managed by the foundation and a community of fellow users that can pick up the reins if the startup goes away. They usually provide support and tested upgrades between releases. They also are operationally more acceptable usually. In some cases, there are even multiple vendors that are producing and distributing the same open source projects, and you can migrate between them, lessening the pain of lock-in. So that's enough about open source customers. Let's talk about the other way you can use open source, which is the way I see it being done wrong most. That's building things. Building things with open source can be cost effective. It can increase developer efficiency. Honestly, I think it's the way you should do things. It allows you to innovate more easily. So of course you should use open source when you build. So what is building? Building can be as simple as using OpenSSL to add certificates to an internal application. It could be making an improvement to an open source project that you do not commit upstream. For example, I've seen an enterprise modify etcd, which is a Cloud Native Computing Foundation project used to store Kubernetes config data, to add a security layer that they decided to keep private. Eventually, their security framework became redundant when the etcd project handled the problem in a different and incompatible way. They had integrated their modified etcd with all their internal systems, and it was expensive and time-consuming to rip that out and replace it with the correct one that once it had been added to etcd. That's obviously a terrible thing to do. Building Kubernetes from source and writing custom integration code, that's another thing that is considered building. Building your own Linux distro like Google does. I'm speaking of Ubuntu, not Android, but that works too. Using the Spring Java framework, which a lot of people use to develop a customer portal. Those are all building using open source. Quite often, developers do not consider extending or integrating an open source project to be building something, but they're wrong from an operational perspective. If you have to worry about upstream API changes breaking your stuff, then you're building something that you need to maintain. So you might have guessed from the examples that building with open source can be both good and bad, either adding or subtracting value. The examples I'm about to get are a little technical, but bear with me. Some ways of adding value. So a financial services company could use Kafka to create an event-driven interconnect between modern and legacy systems as they start to move their applications to modern things from legacy things. It's the bridge. A service provider could use HashiCorp's console as a scalable low latency message queue as a part of a pub subsystem that can deploy millions of VMs or containers. A movie theater chain could use Spring Java framework to build its ticket and seat reservation system. Ways of subtracting value, the bad ways to build things. Similar to the etcd example, but even more egregious, an online trading company made modifications to Apache HTTPD 1.3, adding a listener and handler that increased performance by 1,000%. they decided it was a trade secret that was important enough to keep proprietary. Fast forward a few years, and the developers that wrote those modifications were long gone. Apache 2 had come out with a new incompatible API, and security updates were ending for Apache 1.3. They dug themselves in a huge hole with massive tech debt that cost millions of dollars to fix, and for $0 in value, right? Zero value. You can probably guess that a system that has Java application servers and mainframes, the web servers are not the bottleneck usually, and they're so inexpensive that they're basically a rounding error. So they created all of this technical debt that they had to pay to get out of and got zero value out of it. And I would say that right now, more than half the companies I talk to are doing the same thing with Kubernetes, which is why I developed this talk track. So what are the differences between the adding examples and the subtracting examples for value? The examples that add value are building things that are in line with their customers and their revenue. They are helping enterprises compete. The ones that subtract value don't. Even if you build the best homegrown container registration service, it would not make one bit of difference to your customers and would definitely have a cost and technical debt. Yet, I've seen at least a half dozen times enterprises building their own container registration service. But build things that are in line with your customers and your revenue. Build the differentiators. Buy or get the rest from a vendor, free or otherwise. So since many seem to get this wrong, I created a visual that I use to give executives a way to help them easily determine if they should build or buy something. So I give you Rick's build versus buy quadrants. And again, I'm terrible at naming things. So let me share this. Give me 1 minute. And everyone should be seeing this, hopefully.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, so what I do is I create a graph, right? And on one side, you have ubiquity, which goes from commodity to bespoke. So everyone uses this. It's not special to only I use this. This has to be built just for me. Then on the bottom axis, I have business value, which goes from none to differentiator. Does this matter? Does this help me compete with my customers, with my competitors? Does this help my business? Then I start plotting in the services and the projects that they have, right, on the graph. So a software catalog, an HTTP server, a private cloud software, that stuff is pretty much commodity. If you have the best private cloud server software, that your customers don't notice. It either works or it doesn't work. They don't. That's not something that, unless you're possibly a service provider, that's not something that really matters at all to your customers. And in this case, I told you I mostly deal with financial services. They could have an innovative security tool. The security is a commodity. Everyone needs it. But maybe it's a differentiator. Maybe that adds business value. Maybe their customers want that. Then there's something like a scalable trading service. They have a service, a financial trading company has a service that helps them scale and handle fluctuations in the market. That could be a trade secret. So start plotting those. And then, first of all, there should be nothing that has no business value that you build yourself. These things shouldn't even exist. You shouldn't buy them. You shouldn't build them. It has no business value, and it's bespoke. It shouldn't exist. Second is the buy quadrant. So things that are commodities but are low in business value are no different than electricity. These are things that you should be buying from a vendor or getting or downloading. These aren't things that you should be building yourself. Every single line that a developer writes is a precious resource, right? You're either doing things for your business, you're either helping your business, or you're spinning your wheels and doing doing nothing, not adding value. The next quadrant is build. Stuff up there, if it's just specific to you and it adds a lot of business value, you should build that. In fact, you shouldn't buy that. You should own your destiny. You should own your business. You should be able to iterate on the things that are important, that add value to your business. So that's the build quadrant. Then last but not least, we have the decide quadrant. So things that might be commodity, but in your specific industry, they might add value. They might be things that you might want to build. I gave an example of using Continuum as a service provider. Well, you shouldn't probably be building your own message queue if you're a bank. But if you're a cloud provider, then building your own message queue that helps you, more efficiently, more quickly deploy new instances, that actually might be something that you'd build. So that would be in the decide column, the decide quadrant. And what I usually do with this is I'll write this up on a whiteboard, and I know I've succeeded when I go into the executive's office later and he's written that up and made his developers or his engineering managers plot their services on there so that they can get rid of some of this cruft that people are trying to build. So, like I said, this went really fast because I took out a lot, tried to fix it in 30 minutes. So I'm nearly done. So we'll have a lot of time for questions, but you should definitely use open source. You should definitely build with open source, but make sure that you're adding value and be cognizant of the tech debt that you're creating. Every line of code your developers write should add value to your business and help you compete. And thank you. And I think now we have time for questions. I think 10 minutes for questions.
There you go. Welcome back. Thank you so much, Rick, for going through it. You did indeed do it in the amount of time. I will check, like you say, with the chat. Here we go. I always like we're getting applause. So if anyone here has questions, like I said, I have a delay. You can pose them now. We do have time. Of course, you don't have to make them up.
It's the first time I do one of these talks. I don't. If I practice it, it'll take 3 minutes. But when I do it, it takes 10. Yeah. I just, you have to get used to how fast you speak when you do these things. And it's really strange not to have the audience participation and see you guys out there.
That's indeed the big difference in online. And now we have, again, where I'm from, we have a bit of both. Again, and there you indeed see there's a whole different experience, of course, but you can still add the same value like you did. And it always goes faster. It always goes faster than you planned. And definitely when, of course, you have no one interrupting you or saying that. So if you have questions right now, this is the moment to ask them. I'll have to wait a couple of seconds for them to come in. I was also, from my perspective, like the fact that you started off with the whole Kubernetes, if I pronounce it right, thing. I've been doing this for 5 years now. This is my 5th OpenSlava, like I said in the beginning. And the whole Kubernetes thing is the first thing that I remembered because I'm not into this industry. And now every time my programming, development, IT friends say something, I don't understand what they say. And I just say, they just use microservices and then put it in a container and then use Kubernetes. No idea what that means, but they're like, that's actually not a bad idea. And that's how I've been acting smart for 5 years. So it's always funny to hear that. Let me just quickly refresh. We had some issues with the chat today, so bear with me if it's not there. Applause is still coming in. Of course, you can't see it. Not any questions right now. So for the time being, is there anything else, even like I said, there could be a longer delay because we had it before today. Is there anything you would like to add in the 5 more minutes that you have, that you were like, this is something I wanted to share that I may cut through because I wanted to be fast?
Yeah, I mean, I think I pretty much said it all. I could just use more words. I mean, it is, people are honestly building things they shouldn't. One of the things I see is people building their own multi-cloud solutions. So they build landing zones everywhere that they tightly integrate with their internal systems. And then, they've dug a huge hole, a huge expensive hole that they have to get out of. And there's really no value to their business. And there should be value to the business for every single thing you write. And if there isn't, then don't waste one of the things we talked about in the panel talk is that it's hard to get technical help these days, right? Don't waste them, cleaning streets when they could be doing something more exciting, you know, that you need to be out there doing the things that power your business, not the boring things that prop up someone's CV.
Yeah. And is that something for the people that are watching right now, and if you're a developer, and how do you decide, of course, like you discussed the quadrants, so deciding, does this work, does this not work? Of course, that helps. Is it really telling yourself, okay, what am I doing? Is it adding value to the business? Or is it that people sometimes in what they're doing get these, like a horse, eye flaps on and no longer see? Maybe they think they're adding value, but
I mean, we're all technologists, right? So like we want to use the best technology, and we'll try to find a way to use it. I had someone tell me one time that if you go to a surgeon and you have a problem, he'll find a way to cut you to fix that problem, regardless of what it is. And it's the same thing with technologists like us, right? We're going to find a way to build stuff because we want to build stuff.
Yeah.
But it's key to look at, you know, what your business is, you know, and what will actually help your customers, and focus on those things, and don't build something just because, you know, containers are cool.
There goes my whole argument in the last 5 years. But I really like that. Like, a surgeon indeed will find something to cut because it's a business, and of course you can build it, and you don't build it for the sake of the build, and that you can do it, or that you like doing the build, but is it really adding value? And there again, because it's a topic that came back through the whole day, also with the other speeches that followed the panel, on bringing these two worlds, the ones that build it and the ones that pay for it. Sometimes it's the same. Bring them together to make sure that you're
and you know that little graph that I showed, you know, that I put up, it's super simple and seems really obvious, but it has really helped. I came up for that when I was at MasterCard. Yeah. And I've used that now with many customers, and it's really been helpful, because quite often the executives don't really understand what they should be buying and building, and they're listening to their architects, and this gives them a way to test that.
Okay, all right. And then meanwhile, people are still applauding. Matthew says, "Great talk, Rick." And we have Samuel. Samuel is saying, "Hi, Rick. What is your opinion on using open source ERPs instead of commercial, for example, SAP?"
I think that they're great. I mean, I think that I would happily use open source ERPs. I mean, there's, you know, I think it comes down to sort of economics for you, right? You know, buying some sort of SAP, some PeopleSoft thing, that might work for you. Or if you have the wherewithal to manage it yourself, you know, deploying it on your own infrastructure in the cloud, I think that's a fine way. If that's the most cost-effective thing that works for your business, I would be happy to use that.
Okay, hope that answers your question, Samuel. And great that people are so excited about what you said. And indeed, it doesn't have to be difficult. The little graph, as long as it works and people question what they're doing. For now, that's okay. For looking at the time, looking at my backstage crew. Rick, I want to thank you so much, not only for this talk, but also for joining in the panel, giving your opinion, giving your view on things, and joining through this day. Looking at the claps and looking at what people are saying, great talk, Rick. They enjoyed it and they got value out of it, and that's the most important thing. So thank you for closing. Hope you enjoyed it yourself. That's always
loved it.
There you go.
And I hope to be there in person next time, man. I really do.
Fingers crossed. Let's do that again.
Got to get the world fixed.
There you go. So give him a round of applause again in the chat. Of course, you can't see Rick Clark from VMware Open Source. Are you doing it wrong? Well, you're doing it right if you listen to what Rick shared with us. And that brings us indeed to the end of the first afternoon, evening. I'm looking in Belgium. I don't know what time everybody is at, but I'm seeing the sun setting right in front of me, which is really beautiful. So thank you for joining. Also for the people on YouTube and Facebook, thank you for live streaming. We're all at work probably, or somewhere at school, or wherever you are. Thank you for being there. Also the people walking around with their 3D avatars in the VSF, the visual show floor. I hope you talked to the people there. I hope you collected the badges for your Nintendo Switch. I hope you used the chat. Of course, I can see that. Sorry for any delays in the morning. We'll do it again tomorrow. Tomorrow will be Tech Day. Tomorrow we're going to do a deep dive. Tomorrow we're going to code. We're going to do all stuff and build things, like Rick said. Build things and do the cool stuff and focus on that. That's why we also have 2 streams, so you can choose what is more relevant for you. And like I said, we're having a second host for the second stream, Jan Gordulik, Jan Gordulik, if I pronounce it right, Jan Gordulik, who is a famous stand-up comedian, local stand-up comedian, and blogger flogger. So that will be a lot of fun. If you're like Marnik, today I was at YouTube, I was on Facebook, and you've been talking about this VSF thing all day. Why am I still on it? Go to openslava.sk. You can still register. You'll get all the credentials, and you can join in on the platform tomorrow. You can even make your little business card, and we have a networking. If you look at the program, we have a networking opening in the program where you can dive in live, walk around, talk to people, engage, maybe find your next career, next client, next supplier. And it was all virtual, and it's really, really cool to see. Also, people in the chat shared it, that it was really cool to look at. So tomorrow, AWS, we're going to talk space, robots, Kubernetes is passing again. We're still in the backstage laughing. Yep, that's what we're going to talk about. So I was Marnik van den Broek. Thank you to all the speakers. Thank you for all the partners. OpenSlava 2021 kicked off. We talked about business and tech. Tomorrow, like I said, do the deep dive. But for now, if it's evening in your case, enjoy your evening, process everything you heard, keep building what you should be building, keep pushing the business forward in technology, and keeping that mindset of opening those doors. And then we'll start again with a fresh mind in the morning. Hope to see you there. And for now, I was Marnik. You were great. Thank you very much.